Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this council meeting. Could I ask everyone to note the fire safety instruction on hearing the alarm? You should leave the chamber via the double doors at the back, exit the building through the main entrance and congregate in the car park. Also, please switch off your mobile phone and turn any electronic devices being used to silent. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting is subject to an internet webcast recording where the proceedings are capable of repeated viewing. If you are seated in the public area of the council chamber, it is likely that your image will be captured by the broadcasting cameras and result in your image being part of the broadcast. This may infringe on your human rights, and if you avoid this, you should leave the public seating area in the main body of the chamber and move to the upper public gallery. If members are for any reason not present for the whole debate on an item, you should consider and seek advice as necessary on whether it is appropriate for you to vote on that item. I would also request that members ensure that they are familiar with the procedural rules concerning points of order, personal explanation and point of information or clarification, which are set out on page 3 of the agenda, and remind them that the proper proposer of a motion may speak for 5 minutes to introduce the item, the seconder may speak for 3 minutes, which may be reserved, and other speakers for 3 minutes. The proposer has a further 5 minutes to finally sum up before the vote. Could I ask members to please refer to page number and allow time for us to find it before speaking. I also remind members of the Code of Conduct that can be found in Part 5 of the Constitution. Also the protocol on member-staff relations at Part 5.4. Please can members ensure they conduct themselves in line with the principles outlined. Finally, please remain seated while speaking if it will cause you difficulty to stand. Item 1, apologies for absence. Apologies have been received from Councillor Cloak, Naylor and Wagland. Councillor Gordon, Slade will be late for tonight's meeting. Are there any others? Item 2, the declarations of interest. Are there any declarations to be made at this point? Item 3, Mayor's announcement. Sadly, I start tonight's meeting paying tribute to 3 past councillors, 2 of whom were past mayors. Firstly, Madeline Henwood, who passed away on the 9th of June. Madeline was a Conservative councillor for Tipps Cross from 2002 to 2016 and served as mayor for 2013 to 2014. I've heard that Madeline was very charismatic and became radio famous when appearing on Radio 1's The Mayor of Ware, when the host had to guess which town she was mayor of. I believe she invited him down for a dance at Sugar Hut. Our deepest condolences go to Madeline's family and friends. I would also like to pay tribute to former councillor Paul Barrell, who passed away very recently after losing his battle to cancer. Paul was a Worley councillor from 2015 to 2019. Our condolences go to the former councillor and mayor and his wife, Anne Coe, and family. And so, very sadly, we now pay tribute to serving councillor Mark Reed, who passed away at the beginning of the month. Mark had been a councillor since 2009 and was a proud mayor of our borough in 2015-16. Mark was always such a charismatic and positive person and cared for his community. Our condolences go to his family, friends and colleagues across the chamber this evening. I can confirm that Mark's funeral will take place on the 8th of August and more details will be sent out accordingly. I would ask group leaders to speak first. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Madeline, I felt that I'd only spent a year working with Madeline, but we'd spent a whole term. Such was the size of the group back then. We rarely got to see each other than at full council. So one of my colleagues will speak more about Madeline. Although, whenever I'm door knocking in Stondonmatty, people are always remembering her. And I understand that she was part of the editorial team of Australia Vogue, although that's, you know, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but she certainly would suit the role. And she was always very vocal about planning, I understand. Paul. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Paul was part of my family. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, can I come back to you in a bit?
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Okay. Councillor Aspinall.
Doesn't surprise anybody, I was here and was in the chamber throughout the serving of all of those people you've sadly mentioned this evening. Madeline, yes, was very charismatic, and when I lived in Doddinghurst, or Whites Green, one of the first phones that came on in the area was Farmland 392 was our number. When the BT did, what BT did, done away with the telephone exchange that was in Stondonmatty, it was converted into a building, and Madeline took it over. So I mentioned that one day when she took me home, and yeah, we had a long chat about how it was very difficult to change and adapt from a telephone exchange into a house. But sadly, she is no longer with us. She served excellently as mayor. Mark, Paul Burrell served with, and one of his last places that they lived was in Pilgrim's Hatch, in Hatch Road. So, yeah, I know of Paul, and we served on the council together. Mark, I knew from the day he joined the council, was a dedicated community councillor, one of the best I've met. During COVID, when we were online and dealing with things and taking messages to our residents, letters and leaflets from the government or what we had printed to take out there. Mark at that time was working at the Brentwood Centre, and he took on the whole of, well, half of my ward to deliver. And I thanked him publicly for that and acknowledged his great feeling for people and his town. Even though he wasn't born here, he considered this his town, and for that I will always be grateful and remember someone who feels about this town the same as I do. Sadly missed.
Thank you, Councillor Aspinall. Councillor Gareth Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today I join others in rising with a heavy heart to pay tribute to three dedicated public servants who have all left an indelible mark on our community. I first met former Councillor Madeline Henwood early in my time here, where despite ill health, she finished her mayoral term with grace and dignity. One of my most vivid memories of Madeline was I had fun of serving with her on a licensing subcommittee, and I'd never really talked to her before. And during a quite testy hearing about operating hours of a public house, she sat there stoically, a firm expression on her face, listening, but very kind of, not necessarily judgmental, but there was a fierceness about her. And I went to the back room, and I mistakenly assumed this meant she was favouring a quite draconian approach, to be really quite harsh. But in our private discussion, when I brought this up, I was very much put in my place by a woman who was surprisingly supportive, flexible, and even excited about people having a good time as much as they possibly could. Having had this surprise, we made a decision. We were really quite flexible in the hours. We went back out to the public session, and then came the stoic, quite vicious at some point, or in some cases even Madeline there, telling the licensee their settlement, not the licensee having no recognition at all that it was her who had given him that flexibility, rather than the other two members of that panel. And I think that really taught me that you can never judge someone by their appearance or their approach, and actually there's much more complexity to every individual that you meet. Former councillor Paul Barrell, who joined the chamber shortly after I did, was certainly a councillor of conviction and his principles. He was never afraid to speak his mind. He stood firm on his belief. He had a passionate advocacy for disability rights, particularly around hearing issues, and those who were there remembering him being quite clear when the hearing loop wasn't working, that he could not hear, and making a stop session until it was fixed, which in general was quite impressive because it was pretty hard to fix, and many people were running about for considerable time to make that happen. But of his legacy is our council is more inclusive and it is more responsive. Paul was a determined representative for his ward and his residents, and he represented that community to the absolute best of his ability. My first encounter with Mark Reed was back in 2008, when we were both unsuccessful candidates in Brentwood North. In that campaign, I got to know someone who I enjoyed meeting, who I liked, who I felt regret for not being successful. But at the same time, the following year, we both went into a by-election, and he won dramatically in Hutton South. I could pretty much count the number of votes I got on one hand. He got substantially more, and it's a lesson in any campaign. When you go around and you meet your opposing candidate cutting grass outside a house, you presume it's his house, but he was actually cutting the grass of a neighbour 3 doors down, and at which point I realised my chances were even lower than they were at the polls were telling me. Mark was a true delight to be around. A wonderful raconteur, a performer who simply wanted to help others. He possessed extraordinary personal grace and was both a guide and steer when he handed over the deputy mayoralty to me. But Mark's impact extended far beyond these walls. He will be profoundly missed by his friend from the theatre, where his passion for performance brought joy to countless productions. The families across Brentwood who were enchanted by his animal shows will remember his kindness and enthusiasm. The young performers he encouraged and mentored have lost a champion who believed in their talents. Mark had the rare ability to connect with people from all walks of life, whether in the council chamber, on stage, or in the community. To Mark's family, I want to say how immensely proud you should be of the man he was and the legacy he leaves behind. The warmth with which he is remembered across our borough speaks volume about his character and the lives that he touched. He was a passionate councillor, a determined community campaigner, a man who made a lasting impression on everyone he met. His warmth, his humour, and his dedication to service, and his genuine care for others created a legacy that will continue to inspire us. Mark Reed embodied the very best of public service, and he will be deeply missed by all of us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Councillor Murphy.
I'm not going to be as eloquent as the gentleman over there, as everybody knows. He has a very good turn of phrase, but I want to remember 3 friends. I served with all of them. I first met Madeline, surprisingly, in the hairdressers, as you do. And she came across as a very determined lady, but she is a very kind lady. And I spent many an hour with her in a social sense, and she was jolly good fun, I may say that. But one thing I didn't know about her was that she was the editor of Vogue Australia. She has a wonderful past, a wonderful raconteur, and I remember her with great fondness. Paul was a very, very kindly, giant bear of a man, and he'd always give you a hug if you're a bit nervous about coming in here, as I was when I first came. And he was kindness itself. His wife was a little Welsh dragon, and she won't mind me saying that, because she was. And when she was sitting up on that side, you did not cross her. And Barry will remember that because she was quite verbal with most things. And the last but not least is my friend Mark. My friend Mark was a guy that I adored. He was naughty, he was irreverent, he did everything he could to make the lives of the people around him happy. And sometimes we all forgot him because we saw this persona of somebody who was larger than life and always kind. The last message I got from him, just a few weeks before he died, it said, "Where's my Samaritan?" Because sometimes he'd ring me in the middle of the night, and I'd ring him if I needed him. And that's my friend Mark that I'd like to remember today. And I really feel everybody in this chamber really ought to remember the kindness and the way of being a councillor that sometimes all of us in here, we forget. Thank you.
Councillor Ross, I'm going to go to the ward councillors, but would you like to conclude what you were speaking?
Oh, sorry, it's me.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I've composed myself a little bit here now. So what I was going to say about Paul was that he was part of our family at St Peter's Church, and he done so much at church as well, and in the community. 20 years in the Metropolitan Police Force, detective in Child Protection Unit. We've heard about his work as a governor, Basildon Authority NHS, outreach and information volunteer for Action on Hearing Loss, a member of Board of Trustees at Basildon Brentwood Crossroads Care. He will be sorely missed. We'll be remembering him on Friday at St Peter's. Just very briefly, it'd be remiss of me not to mention a personal friend of mine, Gary Williams, who passed away just a few weeks ago. I mention him because he is one of Brentwood's legends, and if you don't know him, you know one of his friends or one of his relatives. And to spark your memory, he'd often be riding around town on a bike with tight shorts that tight shorts that trying to think of the. We'll move on from that. We'll move on from that. But yeah, it would be remiss of me if I didn't mention the passing of Gary Williams, who also was 63, same as Paul Barrell. And now I'm going to try and dig deep and talk about my friend Mark. You'll see that I've asked for his nameplate to be put out on the front bench. That's a nod to his theatre days, and those that are fond of Les Miserables will know the song Empty Chairs and Empty Tables, and that's a little nod to him. I first met Mark 30 odd years ago in the Hermit, and yeah, didn't get to know him too well there, but you know, we shared conversations. He was always trying to help people and looking after people, maybe consumed too much. And then years later, the first time I met him as a councillor, I was campaigning in Brentwood West, and Louise McKinley introduced me to him, and he looked at me and said, "Oh, we'll take anyone these days." And that was the first thing he said. I wasn't quite sure how to take it, but we become very good friends, and he nurtured me through chairing meetings. I was his deputy, his vice chair on communities, housing, car parks, and there was a long list of things that committee used to do. We only had about 3 or 4 committees back then, and he showed me the ropes on that. He was more than a friend. He was confident. He would. I'd always ring him up, and he'd always answer the phone, and he had a way of talking without speaking, and those that actually really know him well would understand what I mean. You could vent off, you could share your problems, and he would just silently sit there, and you'd feel like he's speaking to you just with his mannerisms, and he didn't have to say anything. But you felt when you left him that you'd had a really good conversation and you knew where you were. He had just this wonderful way of doing that. I had no shame in telling you all that I'd often tell him I loved him. I so adored him. He was a lovely man. And he'd be sorely missed. I really can't say any more than that. I'm so sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Councillor Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And of course, it's incumbent on me to talk about all three of the councillors who we've lost. I knew all three of them really well, overlapped with all of them. Madeleine Henwood in Full Sail was just a splendid sight, and she was such a powerful personality. She was a wonderful mayor. Yeah, she made an event when she turned up, and I know that her residents loved her as well. They had huge respect for the work that she did for them, and quite rightly so. And I will miss her, as I will miss Paul. A very strong personality, someone who it took no problem in letting me know exactly how policing should work, which was a good thing to have, and was not at all shy of having a good, robust argument about things about which he felt strongly. But as others have said, a real advocate and proponent for disability, and I think made a big difference to our borough and our policies around that. But it is, I think, mostly incumbent upon me to talk about my ward partner of 16 years, my beloved friend, Mark Reed. I only really came across Mark for the first time when we became councillors together. It was within weeks of each other. I remember when the Conservative Association chairman said to me, standing in a field somewhere, "You should be a councillor." I thought, well, why not? We'll look at that. And I sort of, for my own ward where I live, and I said, so who's the other councillor then? And he said, oh, a guy called Mark Reed, you'll love him. Everyone does. How true. Everyone does. Everyone has. He was a guy who had a natural empathy. As you said, he could talk to anyone, he could listen to anyone, he could empathise with anyone, he could help anyone get over their problems. And to be honest with you, he did it at great personal cost. I don't know, I knew him really, really well. And I think most of us got to see him when he was on good form, out in public, being mayor, being deputy mayor, talking in the chamber, helping people. He had tougher times. There were times when he put so much of himself into helping others that he had to step back a bit. And I have to say, I was always pleased to be such a good friend of his in those times, to be able to put my arm around him and listen to his problems. I'm by no means as good a listener as Mark was. But I think we had something going which was really meaningful. And I like to think, as a partnership for our residents in the ward of Hutton South, we were a real yin and yang. You know, we could get at problems that residents brought to us in different ways. And there were times, actually, it probably applied best in planning, didn't it? Where, I mean, Mark really knew about planning backwards. He'd been on the planning committee, he knew it all. But sometimes there are difficult things you have to tell residents. So he'd be really great at getting a residents group together. In my front room normally, But he'd make it happen. And he'd get them, and we'd listen to their problems, and he'd listen to their problems and tease out what was really going on. And then hand it over to me to tell them the bad news. That's partnership. That's what proper partnership's all about. Because he'd then pick up the pieces. And they'd leave even liking me, which is very special. He did so much for our ward. He had a real love as well of the wildlife. And I know everyone knows that he was a children's entertainer who had his own menagerie. I don't know how many of you have actually been in his house, but there were lizards and tortoises and hamsters and gerbils and chameleons and chickens and rabbits. And it was sitting there, you know, when we were catching up about things that we need to do in the ward, talking about residents' needs and things, and suddenly you'd be picking a locust out of your pasta, which had gotten away, which was sort of part of, it wasn't my lunch, it was the comedian's lunch, but it was just in the wrong place. He was marvellous like that, but he actually loved the wildlife in the ward as well. Of course, we've got Thriftwood Scout campsite in our ward. Lots of foxes, lots of all sorts of creatures, toads crossing the road. I remember very well sitting with him right by Mosbatch Pond on a summer's evening, just watching the fox cubs play in the fox den on the other side. And of course that in itself could be controversial, because foxes can cause havoc and trash bins, and he'd get the complaints from his neighbour residents about how awful it was, and we'd have to go around, and again he'd take me with him to explain to a resident who was feeding the foxes that it wasn't the right thing to do and they were just encouraging. Yeah. He had the relationship, I had the delivery. It was a good way to work together. He was, as well, of course, much more than a ward councillor, but he was a very special ward councillor. I know what an impact he had as mayor. I know how wonderful he was at supporting so many of the charities across this great borough. Many people will miss his friendly support, love, influence, making things happen. He was, as we just heard, an amazing pillar of the arts. Brentwood Arts Trail, such an important part of that. The Brentwood Theatre, really a formative member of the Brentwood Theatre. He helped make that happen. And he was, of course, its operations manager for a very long time after that. Always interested in trying to help it make it work better, so get a bit of money in. Even got me to have my wife's 40th birthday party there. There you go. He was just doing so much. And the Brentwood Centre as well, of course, where he was a key part of organising some truly spectacular events. And his friend Chesney, I think, was a real contributor to a big event and a really successful show here in this borough. But it is really as a friend, a mate, that I will remember him most. The New Year's Eve parties that he came around to ask for, that we had a really good time at. The friendly lunches, the evenings where we turn up with a pile of papers this deep and we'd sit in my kitchen and just go through what we needed to sort out, whether it was preparing for a big council meeting or whether it was going through stuff for residents, sharing perhaps a glass of red wine, or a glass each of red wine. We were fortunate to live pretty close to each other. He made a huge difference to our ward. He's made a huge difference to this borough. He made a huge difference to my life. 16 years is a long time. I am really gonna miss him. I don't think I can work out how to fill the gap in partnership. We're talked to as ward partners. He was a real partner, and I will miss him deeply. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hurst. Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, all the tributes, and some of them are hard to follow. To actually stand before this chamber and not only talk about one current loss, to also two past mayors and councillors. It's a sad day, I think, in our Conservative group. But with your permission, I'd like to say a few words of Madeline. Madeline was a councillor when I became a councillor for Blackmore. Was, I believe, a caricature of what many people would view a Conservative member to be. Many people would view a Conservative member, if they saw Madeline at conference in a blue dress and her pearls, you could not imagine her being anything else but a Conservative. That was the way she was. That's the way she liked to be seen. She was very proud of her demeanour, and she portrayed it in a very easy manner. It came to her naturally. She was very, very good at what she did. But most of all, she was a good borough councillor, and in some ways probably an even better parish councillor. And on top of that, for the year she was mayor, she excelled in it. It fitted her blue dress and her pearls, and she just loved the glamour, if you like to call it, of being mayor, and she wore it well. She was very good at it. And I don't think we could deny the fact that the way she produced a persona to people as mayor, I think they probably thought she was mayor for life. It was, you know, she was good at it. So, as I said, she was a good councillor and a good parish councillor, and that was reflected in the fact that though she worked hard for the borough and she didn't necessarily have to work so hard to win votes, because she was so well known and so well liked that, and the hard work that she put in, they returned the effort that she gave to them by giving her their votes. So she was, you know, very popular in the ward. She had no problem winning, and I think that was a great boon to us as a Conservative. I can't tell you any funny stories about Madeleine, because she tried not to have funny stories told about her. But the only thing I can remember was that when I was planning chair and we went on our Saturday site visits, she was always in my car, and she chastised me from one site visit to the other about my driving all the time. But when we went on the next site visit, she was still the first person in my car. I haven't actually worked it out, but perhaps, you know, my driving gave her a bit of a thrill, I'm not sure. But she was sadly missed, and rest in peace, Madeleine. She was a good person for this council. As I said, three people. Paul Barrell, unfortunately, was a one-term councillor for the Conservatives group and a partner to a longer-term serving councillor, Anne Coe. Paul, I thought, was quite reserved in some ways. They made a number of good speeches and was a very solid person when it came to putting his point in this chamber. Sadly, only a few of us knew or were aware the fight he was having with cancer. Always an uphill battle, and he took it well, but I know personally how hard a fight he had, and it was always touch and go whether he would you know, be available this week or that week, because his illness was quite acute, though I'm not sure that many people knew it, because he was a big, strong, strapping guy, and he didn't make any bones about what was the matter with him. I was also aware that, again, he served in the Falklands and in the police, and he was quite troubled by his police career in terms of the fact that he was with the Child Protection Squad, and I know of some of the things he saw troubled him quite badly, and but he soldiered on with his illness and his thoughts, and it was sad that he didn't carry on as a councillor for a further term, and the councilman, you know, the one term that he stood. Mr. Mayor, I believe that some great tributes have been made to our late councillor Mark Reed, and there may be a number of members here that still want to pay tribute. So I won't dwell on it too much, but to say that Mark has left a legacy. He was the main mover in getting the money from this council. Funny enough, I remember the arguments we had for the theatre. I think we gave £50,000, but the mover and shaker for that was Mark, and the bricks that were bought to get the money to proceed with improvements at the theatre. And again, he worked so hard on the charter for the market, the work he put into that with people that he knew and found and so on and so forth. And to a certain extent, the plaques that we have outside the town hall around the green, all things that he can be a legacy. Those many things, hopefully Mark will be remembered for. The truth is, he was a lovable person, didn't see anything bad in anybody, and language that's not often used in this chamber, a bloody good bloke. Thank you.
Thank you for those words, Councillor Parker. Councillor Davies.
Thank you. I did serve with councillors Henwood and Burrell, but they weren't close. And so my respect to their families and my condolences. Mark, well, it was a privilege to have counted Mark as my friend. I was always impressed by his commitment to a cause and his endless enthusiasm and energy. Mark and I have a mutual friend. Indeed, it might be the lady whose grass he was cutting. And what she's highlighted to me over the last few years was out of the public spotlight, out of his public persona, what a truly lovely man he was. He was kind and he was caring, and he often used to surprise her with unexpected gifts on her doorstep and then knock and say, "Can I have a cup of tea?" And he will certainly be greatly missed by her. Mark was a man of many talents, as we've all spoken about, and it's been highlighted. But again, my personal experiences were, when I was involved running the Visually Impaired Club for Brentwood, I said to him one day, "Would you mind, Mark, coming along with your coat of many colours and talk to the members and they can feel the coat?" Well, he was there. He was resplendent, and he twirled around and the coat was going, and he loved it, they loved it, and he wanted nothing for that other than to be doing something for the community. The last time I saw Mark was at the Tri-Event at the Brentwood Centre, and you were there, weren't you, sir? He looked resplendent that day. He was wearing his ringmaster's coat. And he was surrounded by happy children, enjoying meeting his animals. In fact, at one point, I had to hold a bunny rabbit as well. He was very insistent. But he was enjoying every minute. And I really believe that Mark was in his happy place. He's someone that will be very hard to replace and will be greatly missed.
Well done.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Councillor Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What a wonderful set of tributes, colleagues. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. I only obviously serve with Mark, but I'm speaking here as the representative for Brentwood Theatre, and I think we need to mark the huge impact Mark had at the theatre, which is the first time I met him. He was the theatre administrator for 15 years from 2002, but really he was its face and its drive and its spirit. And as a facility that aspired to be at the heart of our borough, to have someone at its head who valued and nurtured the community so greatly was a gift. Mark has been remembered incredibly warmly by colleagues on the trust board at the theatre, by long-standing friends of the theatre, by so many of those who have performed there, volunteered there, and enjoyed a performance there. Whether that was a local group or a production that Mark managed to promote to the West End, his impact was fundamental to the success of Brentwood Theatre and will always be remembered as such. It was our collective good fortune that Mark's community engagement and enthusiasm was increasingly felt across the borough in new roles, but was most obviously displayed as Mayor, a role he was born to play. I was a governor at Brentwood County High School when Mark came to present our community awards during his mayoral year. He stayed from the beginning to the very end and made every recipient feel like they had won an Oscar rather than a piece of perspex. Talking to him once the awards had been handed out, I asked him how much he was enjoying being mayor. I'm having the best year of my life, and I don't want it to end. There's never been a better case for a life term.
Thank you, Councillor Mayor. Would anyone else like to speak?
Who will remember us when we are gone? The sad recital of names who are now past reminds us of one unwanted legacy of change. That there will be a day when the memories shared here one day will no longer be heard in this chamber. We've heard some great tributes tonight. The memories of these councillors will always live in our minds, and their deeds shaped this borough, our borough. I pay tribute to all those members past, but especially Mark Reed, one of Hutton's favourite sons, who was known across all the words, but most loved in his own ward of Hutton South. I will remember him when we are gone.
Thank you, Councillor Rigby. Councillor Haig.
Councillor Paul Burrell, I speak of as a fellow Whalley councillor. He was elected in 2015. I was elected in 2018, and we shared 12 months together as fellow councillors. I can't say I got to know Paul well, but I recognise his public service. I'd like to thank him for that service on behalf of the residents of Whalley, who I continue to represent, and also for his service to this chamber. Councillor Mark Reed, I can't even begin to tell you the sense of shock that both Councillor Fulcher and I felt when we learnt of this news when we were a long way away, we were abroad. For me, it's one of those instances, and there aren't many people in my life with a similar experience for me. I will always remember where I was when I received this sad news. And that sense of shock endures because I look across the chamber and I see his chair empty. And that almost makes it worse, not better. Mark, as we've heard, was a former mayor of this town, and it was a post that he enjoyed immensely, but it was also a post that he was willing to share his experiences of, and share them he did with me frequently, offering me advice and guidance, and on occasions commendation, as he felt happy, generally speaking, with the way things were going, but he was always offering steer. He had a huge sense of fun. I met him at the Brentwood Centre on the Try. Suddenly found myself holding a snake. I thought I would never, ever have a passionate fear of snakes, but I suddenly found myself holding one, and there appeared on my shoulder then a bearded dragon, all placed with Mark's sense of fun. His ready smile, the warmth of his persona, and his immense wit will remain with me forever. He's a very kind man because he, at the conclusion of my mayoral term, presented me with a card of thanks. Mark, you were a special man, you are a special man, and you will forever be a special man. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haig. Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo all the comments that we've heard previously this evening about Madeline and Paul. I didn't know them as well as I did Councillor Mark Reed. Madeline had to suffer my driving her home back to Stondermassey a few times when she'd been at an event in Doddinghurst. And Paul I met on the election trail down Woodman Road. Mark Reed, such a special man. He used to be the chairman of the Conservatives across the constituency before me, and he gave me a lot of support and help when I took on that role from him. And he was truly a very kind individual. A lot of the people that actually knew Mark was a councillor didn't necessarily know what his politics were. I'd always found that quite funny. He never pressed the point. I mean, I'm probably the opposite of that, but he was always in places like Hanging Hill Lane, and I kept on saying to him, please, Mark, be careful. There's cars going past you when he's right the other side of the road where there's no pavement, trying to get litter out of the ditch and do things to improve the area in which he lived. His love for the newts at Mosback Gardens Pond was something I found quite fascinating. To be honest with you, I learnt an awful lot. And he's also the theatre work that he did was always very inspirational. We had Chesney Hawkes once in Hutton Poplars, and Chesney was there, and they were doing a rehearsal for Joseph, and I said, he goes, do you want a picture? Do you want a picture? And I said, yeah, I do. So I walked up to Chesney with Mark, and Mark was all ready to take one, and I said, Chesney, could you take a quick picture of me and Mark, please? and to his credit, Chesney took the picture and never offered to have a photo with him, which I was quite, yeah, that was fine with. But in a lot of ways, he really was the one and only. I have to use that phrase. And then the last time I saw Mark, he'd sent me a WhatsApp and he said, fancy coming over for a coffee at mine. The garden is very relaxing at the moment. I won't make you hold any of my animals. So I did go round there, and I was in the back garden, and I'd been out doing something, whatever, and I was wearing shorts, and the chickens were coming round the back garden. And there was one chicken who was losing all its feathers, and forgive me, Mark, I can't remember its name, but it wanted to peck my legs. And then there was this ridiculous situation of Mark chasing this chicken round the garden to capture it so it didn't start pecking my legs. And for that, I'll always be grateful. He was such a kind man. Yet he always was the one to turn up with a small birthday for you and leave it on your doorstep and then disappear. Very, very generous, very kind. And also, I pay tribute to the way he supported his mother, along with his sisters. His mother was a very, very inspirational figure in his life. And he really was such a good, kind son and a lovely person. And all three of them will be very much missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bull. Councillor Minor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's obviously people who know all of those ex-councillors and ex-mayors far better than I do, but I do just want to say a couple of things. Obviously, I overlapped with all of those councillors on the council. I do have a Madeleine Henwood story, which I cherish very much. She was a lovely woman. I won't tell it because it does involve an unexpectedly vociferous criticism of someone who's actually still in the council chamber, so it would be completely inappropriate. But I thought it summed her up marvellously, and I've mentioned it to other people. Paul Burrell, I think somebody said he was quite a quiet man. He certainly made an impression in the council chamber. He was somebody who knew was there, and as has already been said, he made his voice heard, and he campaigned in terms of getting various things which needed to be done. Mark Reid, obviously because he stood in Brentwood North in 2008, the first time I knew about Mark Reid was campaigning against him in Brentwood North in 2008. So when I actually first got elected to the council myself, he was one of those familiar faces that I knew very well. I wanted to say a couple of things. We were both involved with doing work for the putting on the Brentwood Arts Festival in 2014. And I have to say, he absolutely put me to shame in terms of the amount of effort he was prepared to put in. I was thinking, well, there's no way I can keep up with this. You're doing a far better job than I am. I also just wanted to say, I buy copies of the Gazette every week, and I could not buy a copy of the Gazette last week, and I think I know exactly why I couldn't buy a copy of the Gazette. It sold out completely because of the article in it on Mark Reid. The other thing I wanted to say was I heard about Mark dying very close to the point where my family was just about to inter my mum's ashes because obviously she died earlier on this year. I might have thought I'd be a bit numb to something like that, but I have to say really hit me, it really shocked me, and it really hurt me. And I thought to myself, he's younger than me, he's on the council, I know him well, but it was the degree to which it hit me that told me how much I missed him and how bad that was. So I just wanted to stand up and say those things. He will be missed, they will all be missed, but Mark, as has been made very clear, to have a sitting councillor die like that, and at that age, and with all of the marvellous things that people have said about him, it's a terrible thing. I wanted to say something about it.
Thank you, Councillor Monaghan. Councillor Slade.
Thank you, Chair, and I'd obviously like to pass on my apologies for being late this evening. Okay. Mark, my dear friend of 10 years, my fellow ward councillor for one. To have Mark in your life was a blessing, but to be part of Mark's life, you are truly blessed to be included in his world. He is humorous, thoughtful, colourful, who can forget his shirts, steampunk, passionate, crazy, energy world. As an example, Mark, being the kind and generous soul he is, would invite myself and Roger to lunch, where on the table would be a bowl of lovingly prepared salad of chopped iceberg, lettuce with peas and corn. At some point during the lunch, the ducks and chicken would join us, where Mark would introduce us to Vivian and Heston as he served them their lovingly prepared salad of iceberg, lettuce, peas and corn. This is the point you're now drawn into Mark's world, because each duck and chicken were given the most appropriate names. Vivian, because this chicken bore a striking resemblance to Vivian Westwood, and Heston, because he was a fat duck. Myself and Roger have also joined Mark and his bearded dragon for lunch. This time the lunch for the bearded dragon was live locusts, which, sure enough, knowing their fate, escaped. Again, being in Mark's world, myself and Roger sat there eating lunch while spotting the locusts in various places, such as the curtains and on the sofa. And yes, Mark did capture the live locusts, and yes, they did meet their fates. Even with all this hospitality and time, Mark would not let you leave without a gift of freshly laid eggs. Being part of Mark's world also extended to campaigning. During the local election of 24, Mark arrived at the East Ham estate. I pondered why he was wearing a tightly buttoned and tied up Mac, resembling a mix of Inspector Clouseau and Rodney Trotter. After we'd knocked on a few doors and delivered a few leaflets, Mark turned around and, with a few buttons of the Mac undone, revealed why he was wearing the Mac. The bearded dragon had happily joined the delivery session. I do have a photo of this, which I'm happy to share with the councillors. And this is the impact of Mark World, because upon seeing the bearded dragon, I thought, oh, that's why he's wearing the Mac. Not once did I think, why has he bought the dragon? And no, I'm not referring to me. Mark had many talents, and boy could he dance. I often fondly reminisce of dancing with Mark to Come On Eileen. I can still see his showmanship and his perfect dance moves as we smiled, laughed, spun and danced to one of our favourite songs. Another exceptional talent of Mark's was his ability to recite word perfect, and at times without drawing breath, the colours of Joseph's Technicolor coat. And if at any time you are struggling with the passing of Mark, take time to learn the colours. You will feel his presence. It is truly hard to think of my dear friend with so much presence. He's no longer here in the present. I hope you enjoyed being immensely in Mark's world this evening, which even in his passing he continues to do. Because when I informed Jackie of Brentwood Market of Mark's passing, playing in the background was Billy Ocean's Red Light Spells Danger, another song we both loved, sung and danced to. Brentwood Market have asked I passed on their deep condolences to Mark, and I would just like to take this opportunity to thank the various councillors here tonight who have taken their time to contact me since Mark's passing. Your thoughts, your kind words and messages have really made a difference, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slade. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Thank you. I've been asked to read some words from Councillor Wagner, who cannot be here this evening. As a relative newcomer to this council, I count myself incredibly fortunate to have had the privilege of knowing Councillor Mark Reed and all, and I'm truly envious of those of you who have known him for much longer. Mark was always very generous with his time, and it was always worth listening to him about anything at all. He had one of the best voices and best laughs, and there was no side to him. Lots of people have commented on his kindness and gentleness. But he did have a very strong sense of ridiculous and could still poke fun at any of us. With the humanity and without being judgmental. Just as he was for the children at animals parties, Mark was, for me, a truly magical character. It was the most natural thing in the world for him to be accompanied by a completely unfazed hamster to the council chamber one evening. It was fantastical to be introduced to a chameleon which had turned bright blue, and to learn from Mark that this is one which didn't change its colour to match its surroundings, but because of how it felt. And after a particularly horrible evening at council, to open my door and find Mark had noticed and had brought me one of his menagerie, the adorable Heston, to cheer me up, along with a wonderful array of eggs from those he had left at home. There was no one like Mark. We were very lucky to have him and shall not see his like again. But we know he touched so many lives and will be remembered, not least whenever people make the mistake of suggesting that all councillors are the same. He absolutely adored you all and his borough. He was one of our very best ambassadors, from being our mayor to looking after his ward, and he was truly one of the best of us. Please stand for 1 minute silence. Thank you all. It has been over a month since I was formally elected as mayor for this municipal year, and I've already undertaken a number of engagements in and around the borough. I would like to thank the Deputy Mayor for also attending a number of engagements on my behalf during that time. I was honoured to attend a number of events during my time as Mayor, including the King's Royal Garden Party at Buckingham Palace, Brentwood Arts Trail, arriving at the Strawberry Fair event by horse and carriage, visiting Brentwood School, St Peter's School, St Martin's School and Endeavour School, to name but a few. I enjoyed attending Try a Try event at Brentwood Centre and handing out some of the well-deserved medals. After recently attending the King's Award for Voluntary Services, I would encourage you all to consider individuals or groups who truly make a difference in our community, so that they can be celebrated and recognised when their applications open. On the 23rd of June, I was joined by representatives of Shenfield CCF, 104 Essex Transport Squadron and British Legion to raise the flag ahead of Armed Forces Day, remembering and honouring all those who have and do serve our country. On Armed Forces Day itself, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Cuthbert, attended a service led by the Royal British Legion also. I enjoyed a visit from school councillors from Long Ridings Primary School who sat in these very seats conducting their own debate. Thank you to Councillors Barrett and Rigby for attending and supporting with the questions from the children. They were inquisitive and engaged and were a delight. I was delighted to see some of you at my civic service on Monday evening and that at the Regimental Chapel in Worley. It was a lovely service. I would like to give a special thanks to David T, Chapel Warden Mick Chapman, 124 Transport Squadron, Councillor Worsfold and the Brentwood Imperial Youth Band. I am hosting a quiz night on the 12th of September in support of my chosen charities, and I hope some of you will be able to attend. I look forward to many opportunities to meet people and organisations around the borough in the current months, and also start plans for events to raise money for my chosen charities. Item 4, minutes of previous meeting. Is it your wish that I sign as correct record the minutes of the Ordinary Council held on the 19th of March 2025, which begin on page 7 of the agenda? Is it your wish that I sign item 5, minutes of the annual council? Is it your wish that I sign as a correct record the minutes of annual council meeting held on the 14th of May 2025, which begin on page 25 of the agenda? Item 6, public questions. No public questions have been received. Item 7, memorials or petitions. No memorials or petitions have been received. Item 8, committee chairs, reports and members' questions. The period allowed for written and oral questions is 60 minutes. 2 written questions have been received from Councillor Barber. Councillor Barber, you have the opportunity to ask 1 supplementary question per question if required.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm not going to ask any supplementary questions today, given the background to today's meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Barber, would you like to read your written question? No? Each member has the opportunity to ask each chair 1 question relating to their committee and 1 question to the leader of the council. Are there any oral questions to the chairs? Councillor Kendall.
Sorry? Yeah, probably, but I've got to speak first. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did have my hand up to ask a question because you are actually a chair. You're chairing this assembly. Now, because I can't see very well, I do listen attentively. Could you please add where your quiz night is?
Good question.
King George's Playingfield Pavilion.
Sorry?
King George's Playingfields Pavilion.
Thank you very much. In answering Councillor Kendall's question, I will refer to my 2 colleagues and my 2 deputy chairs as well as myself, because they have attended, thankfully, and I do say thankfully because the responsibility of representing this council at the LGR meetings is onerous. It is long and it is something that I wouldn't wish on anyone. The officers that we engage never fail to fill me with awe with their professionalism and their grasp of the situation. The latest situation I will add to in a minute, Mr. Mayor, if it's okay with you. I will hand over to Councillor Barrett first, and I think Councillor Barrett first.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Aspinall, and thank you for the question. I hope members don't mind if I read out quite a lot of information rather to make sure I get all the facts right. So, on behalf of Councillor Aspinall, we wanted to ensure that all members were kept up to date on developments and the current position regarding local government reorganisation. As members are aware, Greater Essex has been included in the government's devolution priority programme. It's therefore one of the first tranches to go through both devolution and local government reorganisation, following the government's devolution white paper published in December 2024. Devolution, as members will be aware, fixes firmly on the creation of a new strategic authority covering Greater Essex and an elected mayor which works alongside existing councils, enabling them to access and exercise powers and funding that are traditionally held at the national level. The mayoral election has been confirmed and will take place next year in May 2026. With regards to local government reorganisation, as members will recall, the Council endorsed an interim plan in March this year, alongside all other local authorities across Greater Essex. This plan identified that 10 local authorities in Essex at that time had indicated a preference in principle for a 5-unitary model across Essex. This interim plan was submitted to government for comment and feedback. The government, in its response to the interim plan, provided some clarity in connection with the issue associated with population size of future new unitary authorities, and said, in some of the options you are considering populations that will be above or below 500,000. As set out in statutory invitation guidance and in the English devolution white paper, we outlined a population size of 500,000 or more. This is a guiding principle, not a hard target. We understand that there should be flexibility, especially given our ambition to build out devolution and take account of housing growth alongside local government reorganisation. All proposals, whether they are at the guided level, above it or below it, should set out the rationale for the proposed approach clearly. Further, the government expressed their preference for a single business case to be submitted by Essex on the 26th of September. However, it appears that there will now be 2, 3 or even 4 business cases being put forward for Essex. Work continues on the proposed 5-unitary model. Whilst it should be noted this would see unitary authorities with a less than 500,000 population is still preferred by a number of Essex councils, including Brentwood, where other Essex authorities are advocating for a less than 5-unitary model. And it appears in the last few weeks that the less than 5-unitary model led by Essex County Council have indicated a 3-unitary model that places Brentwood in a unitary with Epping, Harlow, Chelmsford and Malden. We have also been made aware that Thurrock prefers a less than 5-unitary model. However, their preference is a 4-unitary, but we at this point are not sure on the exact configuration of that. And however, as of last night, there is also another 4-unitary authority model from Rochford, which will add further uncertainty. So for clarity, in Greater Essex, it's possible to see 4 business cases developed. Business Case Group A, a 5-unitary authority model. Business Case Group B, a less than 5-unitary model, the split into 3-unitary authorities. Business Case Group B2, a less than 5-unitary model split into 4-unitary authorities, and I haven't worked out what they call the Rochford plan yet. Brentwood Council is only actively participating in Business Group A in accordance with our clearly stated preference for 5-unitary authorities across Essex. In order for any business case to be put forward with solid evidence, work has been commissioned by Essex authorities to ensure the information used is consistent and relevant to any of the business cases. Further, with collective agreement from all Brentwood Group leaders, we recently commissioned Grant Thornton to develop out their initial work, consider whether there were any alternative configurations for Brentwood, or if the current 5-unitary model, which will see Brentwood Borough aligning with the areas of Chelmsford and Malden, is still the favourable choice for us. The report arising from this piece of work was recently circulated to members, and it did validate that 5 option as structured as the most solid business case. The report also considered further considerations in a 3 or 4 unitary model to ensure we were considering all options. The business case groups are working towards completion of the business cases by mid-August to enable the matter to be considered through each local authority's own governance processes by its deadline, the 26th of September 2025. As members have been advised, an extraordinary council meeting will be held on the 15th of September for the council to consider the final proposed business cases. We will also be seeking to hold members' briefing prior to the extraordinary council meeting, where we can go through the proposed business case in detail. Members will also be aware, following recent communication, that at present there are 3 engagement exercises taking place. One is a survey being undertaken by the business case group supporting and developing the 5-unitary model. It is open to anyone to complete, whereas the other 2 are not committed to any particular model in the consultation and are supported by all councils. These surveys seek to gather data from residents and stakeholders on their preferences. These other 2 surveys are targeted. One will target 1,400 residents to be representative across the board to seek their views, and the other is targeted towards stakeholders such as community groups, health and businesses. These surveys will close or be completed in the next few weeks, and this information is going to be available to all councils to use to support their submissions to government. In order to support the council in managing the workload, we have recruited an LGR policy and engagement officer who will assist with the LGR policy development, future engagement with the local stakeholders and other districts and boroughs. They will also assist with programming, review of documents and appraising information into clear, concise material. They will also provide support to communications to members, staff and other stakeholders as necessary. This role will be shared across Brentwood and Rochford as part of the one-team approach, although recent challenges mean we'll have to work through that. I would also like to assure members the council staff are being fully engaged with the staff newsletter, staff briefings and their team or service meetings and via the online pages specifically for LGR. Meetings of group leaders to discuss LGR matters have been recently held, and we will continue to engage group leaders as appropriate as matters progress. I think that's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Councillor Minor. You have a hand up for a question?
No, I didn't have one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, question on the leaders' report. What is the level of electoral representation that is planned under LGR under all the models that have been proposed? Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I hand over to my glorious assistant here, who will tell you how that has panned out following a meeting we had in Southend a couple of weeks ago, and quite recently this Monday.
I would just like to say I agree with everything Councillor Barrett said. On a more serious note, Essex has put forward propositions that financially are very good, but democratically they're flawed. They're really all running on business cases that are not actually taking account of what really cares, I think we care about, which is representation of the residents. Luckily, the business case A that we are going for has the backing of Grant Thornton in the fact that whilst it may be dear in certain respects, it is much better value and will deliver a much better service over the board. Now, the reason that we have opted for 5 unitaries as opposed to the 3, I go back to democracy again, and it really was a red line for Brentwood at some of these meetings. We were not going to be bounced along and end up where you've got 8 to 12 councillors representing the entire borough of Brentwood. What county would like is for us to be following the county boundaries and then probably having 1 representative in those areas. That's to my mind, that's a dereliction of duty. And I did point out at one of these meetings, well, that's fine, but if you've got upwards of 5,000 people to look after, how on earth does Mrs. Bloggs get her boiler sorted out when it breaks down? it's bringing a whole new attitude to local government. I'm not opposed to certain aspects of it, and I think, you know, there's certain things that could improve, but it's our job to look after the 5 unitaries, look to have 19 to 20 councillor representation, which means they'll have an electorate of 3,000 people. Even that is a lot, but my goodness, it's a lot better than having 5,000 to 7,500. So we will be fighting our corner to continue with the 5 option.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got 2 quick questions, if I may. My first question is to the Chair of Clean and Green, and Councillor Worsfold. So back in March, I asked a question to the Chair of Clean and Green, then who was Councillor Aspinall, about what we were going to do to improve recycling rates for flats and apartments around Brentwood. And at the time, the answer I received is that this was something which was a priority and we had to get our head round, and we were going to engage with professionals. Now, we obviously had a consultancy company come in who were paid to consult us on recycling and waste strategy. Could I ask, in the 4 months that have transpired, what improvements and what solutions have been targeted or progressed by the administration, please?
No, thank you for the question, Councillor Barber. As you know, the focus over the last few months has been to construct the pilot trial in Ingatestone, and that's what we've been engaging with the consultants most fervently on, and as you know, that was passed to Clean and Green last week, so we look forward to that going ahead. With flats, we have to, from next April, arrange for food waste to be collected separately, and we are preparing for that. We believe that is going to be a challenge, because as every member knows who's got flats in their wards, and I think that's probably all of us, many of the waste storage areas were designed in a different era when we didn't separate different types of waste. But we are obliged, it is a government directive, we are going to have to try our best to work with the residents in whatever configuration of waste collection areas they have to facilitate collection, weekly collection of food waste. That should help, and it may also identify opportunities for us to communicate. We do have a borough magazine. We are planning to have in the autumn issue of it some very informative content on recycling. So we hope that we can carry people forward with our commitment to improve the recycling rates, which in this borough are embarrassing, 36% and falling. So we've got to do something about them. We are making a start, and we will continue to bring forward ideas to Clean and Green.
Thank you very much for the answer. The second question I have, and it's the final question tonight, is to the council leader. Given the council leader's statements in the past about postponement of elections for county council elections, would the leader like tonight to commit that the administration led by him will be holding elections next year if he has the legal powers to do so?
I have no idea what the future will bring. All I can say is that we have been told thus far that next May 2026 there will be a mayoral election. We have also been told at the LGA conference, and I believe with a communication that has been held with the leader of Essex County Council, that there is that county elections and local elections are scheduled for next year. So that's all I can tell you. Thank you.
Councillor Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for the leader. The leader has obviously been very involved in discussions about local government reorganisation and has stated how onerous that has been, but it seems to have focused on unitary authorities and the number of unitary authorities we'll have in Essex. But can he enlighten us as to any discussions that have been held on parish councils, whether the number of parish and town councils will be expanded or what will happen? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, there has been some discussion regarding parish councils. There's been no decisions, as no one has the authority to make that decision. There has been no discussions as to disband any existing parish councils. They're worth to the assembled bodies of county and borough city councillors has been extolled frequently, and the possibility of extending and creating new parish councils, new city and town councils, not city councils, sorry, new town councils. So there is something that it is being looked at in the round, and there are discussions going on with other unitaries that have already taken this path, this decision, where they have expanded Cumberland, Somerset, North Yorkshire, somewhere else, that they have expanded the parish councils to go across their entire region, because they valued and saw that some of those parish councils and town councils had a fundamental role to play, because in some cases, as Councillor Davis alluded to, there was such a distance between unitary members and the residents that parish councils were filling that role. And they have, in fact, devolved certain powers to those parish councils, to those town councils, and we're looking to have that information going forward. But it will not happen until the unitaries have been formed, because they will have the power to be able to do that, not the shadow and not us talking about it at the moment. So unfortunately, I can't give you any more information apart from the fact that we're looking at it. And when speaking at the LGA to other councils that have already gone through this, they're in Cumberland, they have looked at implementing locality boards. In fact, they have done that, which means that there's a room like this, a building like this, that's being used in part of their unitary, but it's not their headquarters. It's where the locality board meet to decide planning applications, parks and bin services. So there is a use, hope, and I will do everything I possibly can, if I'm involved at all, that this building would remain in Brentwood and in use for public democratic services provision, sorry, not services, so that the local people of Brentwood can actually assemble somewhere democratically to hear and listen to their local members speaking. So that is what is being looked at. There is nothing tangible until we become a unitary. And while I'm on my feet, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to not correct Councillor Barrett, because I couldn't possibly do that, but to say that we do know who Thurrock wants to be with. And Thurrock have announced that their preference would be for Harlow, Epping, Brentwood and themselves. There may be a problem with that going forward, who knows? We're still talking about Thurrock's debts. We're looking at what the government are going to do with Surrey or Sussex? Sorry. Because they've got Woking who have got more debt than Thurrock. So we're looking to see what the reaction is there so that we can plan possibly for the future here. Rochford have decided that they want an alternative than to going in with Southend. And that is why they have made their move, I believe. They haven't stated that, but they want to be with us, Chelmsford and Malden, not with Southend, Castle Point and themselves. So that brings us to a thorny subject of this council being partnered with another council who is now asking our officers to produce evidence to sustain and to put forward their choice. So that needs further discussion because that means further officer time, and as we know through past experiences with the peer review we had, we were told in no uncertain terms that Brentwood officers working on subjects that are relating to Rochford, we should bill them. That is quite clear, that must happen. So I'm just stating that here and now. That will happen. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Aspinall. Are there any other questions? Councillor Rigby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would the Leader of the Council provide an update on the current situation as we prepare our proposals to send to the Government regarding local government reorganisation Essex on any heritage assets that may form part of any council that one day succeeds Brentwood Borough Council?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this has been a subject that I've been involved in right from day one, the first time we had it to get together. And I sat on the table with Kevin Bentley and the leader of Essex County Council, lots of officers and another leader from, I believe, Tendring. And we spoke about the disaggregation of the county council and districts whose estate had to be valued. And I asked at that time, how are you going to value places that have a depreciation or could appreciate if you change the nature of that building or that estate? I said, we in Brentwood, whatever happens, the people that will be running the unitary that Brentwood is part of will be looking after Wild Park, Thorndon Park, for definite. We'll also be looking after this building. We'll also be looking after all three libraries in Brentwood. That will be our responsibility, along with lots of other schools and associated county buildings some that we don't even know about. So we need to understand how that's going to be evaluated, because to bring these buildings up to a certain level, the government has set us a standard by where our buildings have to be. That may cost a lot of money, but that's an unknown. And David Dickinson has got to work with his colleagues around Essex to work out that, to get a figure. Now, I asked on Tuesday certain questions, and I said that in our borough, we have a building that County Council have now possibly devalued by shutting its doors. And I refer to Bishop's Hill. The county council have taken that decision, but how will that affect us going forward? That is a valued asset within our community. I said, what is going to happen? The county council, in the guise of the deputy leader, has written that the building could be used for offices. Well, that may or may not be the case. Does that increase the value of it? Does that decrease the value of it? At the moment, it's a really valued community asset on special educational requirements, old and young. Essex County Council has the worst SEND provision in the country, bar none. The cabinet member got up at a full council meeting I was at and apologised to the people of Essex because the system was broken and we couldn't continue at any level with SEN. It doesn't surprise me that the county council has now decided to close Bishop's Hill. It's what they do with it that is significant. It is Essex County Council's decision to do that, and it's down to us at Brentwood Borough Council and our residents to try to do something about getting it saved as a building first, 2, to try and get it back into local community use, first, secondly that, and third, evaluate it, value its existence. It is a building of significance in this council. We own Hutton Poplars Hall. We value it. We refurbished it. We spent money, lots of money, hundreds of thousands of pounds in refurbishing it and bringing it up to speed. We're now trying to develop it into something, and hopefully we will be able to keep that going. Hutton Poplars Lodge is also ours, but Essex County Council own Bishop's Hill. It is down to them to decide what they're going to do with it. I know there's a great furor within the community of a campaign to try and keep it open. Great, but let's be real about it. It's Essex County Council, Conservative run council, that has closed this. And we need to do something about it. How do we know that there isn't plans going forward for Weald and Thorndon Park? I've asked, I've yet to receive an answer. We'd like to know what contracts have been let out long term, what schemes are going in there, how they're managing it, what does it cost? We need to know that because members, some of us who may be unitary councillors going forward, we need to understand what our roles will be and the extent of what is expected of us. And keeping buildings that are dear to us, understanding the running of these assets that are so close and so dear to our residents are important, and we need to understand what is going to happen. Therefore, I am determined that you will all of us, be brought up to speed, as the Deputy Leader, Gareth Barrett, said. We will have a full briefing on how we've come to certain decisions that we've taken. And then we will be able to understand what is being asked for us on that extraordinary council meeting on the, is it 26th of September? 15th, sorry. When we make our decision on the 5 or the 3. Yeah. Or the 4. or the 4+1. And while I'm standing, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pay credit to 3 people that have made outstanding contributions at the debates that I've been at, and my colleagues have been there. One is the Chief Fire Officer, one is the Chief Constable, and one is the Commissioner that is here tonight. I did ask if he could make his presentation. He said he wasn't going to be there, unfortunately, but now we cancelled the meeting. He is here, but I'm not going to put him on the spot and ask that. And I don't think it's part of the. I don't think it's part of our meeting tonight. But I would like Roger to be able to make that presentation with his colleagues at some stage to all of us, because it's worth understanding, and the information come forward is first class. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Aspinall. Are there any further questions? No. Move on to item 9, which is revised political balance and allocation of committee seats. The report begins on page 57 of the agenda. Mrs. Mayhew, have you anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is an amendment to the allocation of seats to political groups that was previously agreed at annual council, but it does require full council's approval. As stated in the Constitution, any vacancies to committee membership will be taken offline in consultation with the group leader. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayhew. Councillor Aspinall, would you like to move the recommendations, please? You have 5 minutes.
Certainly do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I second this motion and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move the item into debate. Anyone wishing to speak has 3 minutes to speak. Is there anyone who wants to speak to him? Councillor Barrett, 3 minutes.
I'm sure it was worth reserving it, Mr. Mayor. But just to say, obviously these are democratic processes. Thank you to the monitoring officer and the services team for updating these. And a welcome back to Councillor Murphy to the Assets Committee. I'm trying to work out a worthy comparison. I'm trying to not say like a bad smell of returning, but there's something much more polite I'm sure I could think of. But I just said that analogy. Yeah, it's one of my bad ones. I'll sit back down now quietly, and I hope you vote for it and don't consider Councillor Murphy a bad smell. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Barber, did you wish to speak?
Yeah, just one quick point. Obviously, I'm going to vote for it, but could I just ask, we have the planning meeting, because planning does tend to jump around in the diary. We have, at the planning committee, requested that in due course the CWG considers assigning 3 substitutes for the main administration group, because sometimes when the dates move around, it is proving very problematic with just 2 named individuals. So if that could be given some consideration, we would appreciate it, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. Duly noted. Councillor Aspinall, would you like to sum up?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Brevity. Thank you, Councillor Aspinall. So we now move to the vote on the recommendations on page 57, 58 of the agenda. Recommendation R1, that the revised allocation of seats to political groups and membership of committees as set out in Appendix A be approved. R2, that the Council appoints members to joint committees for the 2025-26 municipal year as is set out in Appendix B. R3, that the Council approves the appointments of members to outside organisations for 2025-2026 as set out in Appendix C. All those for? Thank you. The motion has been carried. Item 10. improving community and parish engagement. The report begins on page 79 of the agenda. Mr. Campbell, anything to add?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, members. Nothing further to add. This report went to the Assets, Projects and Strategy Committee and has been referred to full council this evening. The recommendation to approve and establish a Borough Community Assembly with the terms of reference in Appendix. This supports one of the themes of the corporate plan, engage communities and community representatives in the council services. And what this is doing is seeking to bring parish councils together, other community groups, to establish a regular rapport with them about what is going on for the council and create that two-way dialogue. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Councillor Barrett, would you like to move the recommendation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to propose the establishment of our Borough Community Assembly, a step forward in how we engage with our residents and community groups. Let's be honest, our engagement with parish councils and community organisations has been a bit hit and miss over the years. We are fine talking to them in certain circumstances, maybe when there's a crisis, maybe your planning application, but perhaps not so good at keeping that conversation going the rest of the time. This Assembly aims to change that. Meeting every few months, it will bring together representatives from parish councils, community groups, faith organisations, businesses and voluntary services. It creates a proper forum for two-way dialogue rather than the somewhat ad hoc approach we've had until now. The Assembly will allow for real conversations on borough-wide issues, including our asset proposals, housing, the LDP, environmental strategies and more. It will give us early warning of community concerns before they turn into the kind of issues that fill our inboxes with strongly worded emails. Now, I know what many of you may think. It's not another talking shop. This isn't about creating more bureaucracy. It's about making sure that when we make decisions in this chamber, we've actually heard from the people who will see the impact of those decisions in their community or will be delivering those decisions. The whole thing will be transparent, meetings open to the public, published agendas, the works, and it will be inclusive, ensuring that unparished areas get the same look in as those with parish out council through residents groups. It directly supports our corporate plan priority to engage communities in council decision making, or put more simply, it's about actually listening to people before what we decide what's best for them. And I think in general, we know when we've had parish councillors who've ascended to join us as councillors, their contribution has often been highly valued. That community link has added value and opportunity, and in turn, engaging with them earlier in that process, not having them need stuff at the borough level, I think would be good for all of us. And let's talk about wonderful examples of that, like Councillor Murphy, who I'm trying to make up with quite rapidly, who is a key benefit from the chamber, and having that experience is always highly valued. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Do you have a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor, and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Now open the item out to debate. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a different opinion on this side about this item, but I'm all in favour of it. It's something that stood out in the budget, which I thought was really good. I spoke to Councillor Barrett about this coming forward and some fears and concerns that I might have. He's covered it all in the terms of reference. I think it's absolutely fabulous. I would support it wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Councillor Poppy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm afraid I'm the other side of it, which is why Councillor Russell said that it's mixed opinions. I can understand all of what Councillor Barrett just said, and I can see that the point to it. Where I disagree, although I should say first off, I think Councillor Barrett does like to make us laugh in this chamber, and I find this being on the same agenda as item 12 quite funny, because I think there's a parish council in West Horndon that would love to have had a conversation with the administration. I think it's, although as I say I can see the benefits, I also worry that it's just too big. We're all elected to represent our areas and our residents. Ward councillors, we're lucky if we've got parishes. We spend time at the parish meetings. We spend time talking to local people. Those that are not parished also have housing or residents associations that I know they speak to, and this type of stuff. So there's always the conversations going on. On page 70, one of your own risks is the fact that you may be too many people involved, too much, and also not enough. So it's a real double-edged sword. I can only talk from experience of King George's, where we obviously had to engage with the golf club, the allotments, the local residents, the governors of Brentwood County High School, who didn't want us to be doing anything. They would prefer the money have gone to the Red Rec and this sort of stuff. But then out of the blue, a guy that didn't get appointed to a role within the park set up a thing called the Friends of King George's. And I know a couple of councillors on your side sort of joined them for a while. But what my point is that in the 3-4 years now that King George's has been finished, and I'm glad to hear the mayor's using it for his quiz night. That's fabulous. I've never heard of the Friends of King George's. They've never come back. They've never reappeared.
Second councillor.
And so this is what kind of bothers me. So I am really caught betwixt and between, but I won't be voting for this.
Thank you, Councillor Poppy. Councillor Hurst.
Yeah, thanks. I think there have been some good points made on both sides of that conversation. But from my perspective, I think I will be voting in favour of it because of the previous conversation we had about local government reform. So as we get the new shapes of unitary councils, there's a very strong steer from central government that under these unitary councils we will need to have what they're calling area committees. I come at it from the perspective of the day job. Community safety partnerships are really important in terms of understanding the priorities of safety across the individual areas, the local areas of our great county. I know from experience that my chum up in Lincolnshire, who decided to have one CSP for Lincolnshire, has found it not very successful. There is no local flavour there. You've got one size fits all. You're not actually managing to make it work. As a reminder, in population terms of this, though Lincolnshire, of course, is a fantastically large area, Lincolnshire would be about the size of one of 3 unitaries, if that's what we ended up with in Essex. And I think I don't want to end up with 3 community safety partnerships. Actually, they probably need to be not just safety, they probably need to be community partnerships. And I really think that setting up this entity is going to be a useful trial, I hesitate to say experiment, pilot at least, for how that structure under a unitary can work, bringing partners together and making sure that we still have an entity that can look at least something as small as the borough of Brentwood. It may well be that we find it is too big. Councillor Poppy may be right. It may be too clunky, it may have too many partners in it. That's going to be such vital learning over the next year or so as we move into the new territory of local government reform. I just know that we're going to have some way of really reflecting what matters in localities. And maybe it's one for the borough of Brentwood, maybe it's one for Brentwood and one for the rurals, I don't know, going forward. Let's learn by doing. That is by far the best way to learn. So I'm certainly going to support this evening. Thank you.
Councillor Waldorf.
As a ward and parish councillor, I just wanted to ask how it would be structured in as much that if there is a committee and you are a parish councillor, would you then be invited along to the meetings? I do think it's useful, especially as since being a ward councillor, I've never missed so many parish councils because they so often conflict with ward business, especially planning, obviously, because there's so many of those. So I guess my question is, who would be invited?
Councillor, Mr Campbell, do you have a...
Thank you, Mayor. In Appendix A, where it sets out the members of the Assembly, I can list them out, but just as the top few probably relate to this, who's going to be invited. Leader of the Council or their Deputy, Chair or Vice Chair of every committee, Opposition Leader of the Council, and then it's Chief Executive or Representative of Brentwood Council, then it's the Parish Councils and various other committees. What it will also be open to is other community groups that have been established. There will be a way of them applying online that we are going to set up as well. But it is open to the public so other people can attend and listen in as well. I think that's it, yeah.
Thank you, Mr Campbell.
Mayor, sorry.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak? No, that's the case. I return to Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support this recommendation because I think if we remember what the leader was saying earlier about the possible restructuring with the new organisations and into the unitaries, I think we owe it to the parish councillors who are out there at the moment to make this contact so that we can guide them as we get to learn more about it, so they will learn more about it, because it will be a major change and there will be a lot of parish councillors who I knew won't want to go through. You know, might want to step back if they start to feel there's additional responsibilities being handed down to them. But unless we meet to talk and discuss as we go through the learning process ourselves, there's no hope. We can't just abandon a level of democracy in the borough. We need to support it, and I think this is one way of going about it.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the contribution from members to this. As Councillor Russell noted, within this process, and as we go forward, and Councillor Hurst actually be quite right to see the 12-month review, this is very much a pilot approach. This is learning as we're going along in terms of how we can improve this, how we'll update this, and in terms, while I know I haven't satisfied Councillor Poppy's point, I hope he recognises in the TOR where we have looked to make sure that the group has some accountability to those that they represent, be identified as a going concern by a community safety team, community services team. Actually, we are looking to make sure, and Councillor Russell made other very strong points about individual planning campaign groups and other factors that actually aren't representative, they are single issue items. We want this to be genuine community voices, not single issue campaign groups, and in turn, that's what we're trying to achieve. In 12 months, there will be a review of this, whatever elections hold, and I think that will be a useful opportunity for all of us to say, has it worked as a principle? Yes or no? Can it be improved? If it works as a principle, yes. Can it still be improved? Yes or no? And how we do it. And in turn, as we go along, I very much welcome, provided it's voted for through tonight, any member feed in to see what happens with it, how we can improve it, how we can change it from those who are supporting it or against it. I hope I'm right, but I'm more than prepared to be wrong. But I think it's a worthy opportunity and a worthy task for us to follow. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. We will now move to the vote on recommendations on page 79 of the agenda. R1, that the Council approves the establishment of a Borough Community Assembly and that the terms of reference set out in this report at Appendix A. All those for? Against? Abstentions? Thank you. Item 11, Annual Report. The report begins on page 87 of the agenda. Mr Birkinshaw, anything to add?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Before members is the annual report setting out progress against the Council's corporate plan that you adopted at the Council meeting held on the 9th of October. The report sets out progress against a number of key projects and programmes, as well as measures of performance relevant to the key strategic themes in the corporate plan. I would just add, Mayor, that members will note from the Policy Committee work programmes that performance against the corporate plan will begin to be reported on a quarterly basis to the policy committees
in order that there is continual oversight throughout the year. And equally, I would just draw attention as well to the reference in the report that assurance is also provided on performance and a number of other means, particular reference to the annual governance statement and the statement of accounts, their responsibility of the Audit and Governance Committee. A comprehensive report, Mr Mayor, before members this evening, and just recognition of the colleagues in the performance and the policy team who've done a great job in pulling together what is a useful report for members. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Aspinall, would you move the recommendations, please? You have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Absolutely will, with great pleasure, recommend this to the council to be approved, adopted. This is a fantastic read. I'm told there's an awful lot in there of good. I haven't read it. It's been read to me. That there is much that we have done to be proud of. It's a very good story. It's one of resilience, of overturning everything that was possibly against us to our credit. I pay tribute to all my chairs, vice chairs and committee members, members opposite as well, who are part of those committees that have delivered this fantastic report. If you just cast your mind back just 2 short years ago, prior to this administration taking position, the actual state of Brentwood at that time. Our finances were in a terrible state. Our car parking and its machinery was unusable in places. Lots of things weren't happening. I think 1 or 2 members told us there was lots of overflowing bins and stuff. That, in the main, has been addressed. We are looking forward to a great report coming out next year, and I pray, as again I say, to all those officers and members that are part of this, pay tribute to. Brilliant job, brilliant read. I recommend it. Nighttime reading, brilliant.
Thank you, Councillor Aspinall. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Barrett.
And I'll second this and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you very much. Open the item out to debate. Councillor Barber, you're first to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I've obviously got to respond to the overflowing bin question. Obviously, you didn't drive to Hutton Poplars over the last 2 days, where you would have seen 3 bins overflowing. All the photos were submitted to the portal on a member request, copied to Councillor Worsfold, and that's just one road this week. It's quite interesting, isn't it, how a council pats itself on the back. Let's be quite clear. This is a council which inherited a good asset base, and the Children It Shall has put the council in a very good position. That asset was acquired by the previous administration. Let's be quite clear about that. If you actually look at the achievements of this council, the promised achievements, the Strategic Housing Directive, for very good reasons, because of your net zero obsession, is years behind. We have not built a house since Whittington Mews. We've knocked a few down, we've left a few sitting empty, and I've got to say that Councillor Barrett will get on top of it. I have complete confidence in him delivering on that. But it is years behind. The Baytree Centre. How long ago did you promise us a cinema? And the progress is very, very slow. And I actually do think that Councillor Barrett will actually deliver on that. But you're being bailed out basically by the Labour members on your administration, because there's a lot of failures. Do you remember, for example, when you actually asked us to look at all the alternatives to pesticides, and you included flamethrowers to burn the weeds away? Foam, yeah, what a great success that review was. If you look at the rewilding, most of the areas that were rewilded looked very messy. The ones opposite the Brentwood Centre looked an absolute disgrace. If you go into Shenfield, there are weeds growing up out of the pavement everywhere. That's not Essex County Council. You can't pin that one on them. That's you. That's your administration. And the chair of Clean and Green comes from Shenfield. So why isn't it better? Why, when we walk down our high street,
Do we see the telephone boxes still there that I mentioned to you 2.5 years ago when I became a councillor, and I suggested you got them removed? They're still there, looking ugly, unattractive, and they've not been used by any residents. I know there's plans to get rid of them. I haven't finished yet, please, if you don't mind. So my point is, you can pat yourself on the back, but what you really ought to be thinking about is the things that you promised and you haven't done. Read your magazine and your own quotes in your own newsletters, and you've not delivered on an awful lot. So I'll be either abstaining or voting against noting the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. Councillor Worsfold.
I think Councillor Barber brought up a few things in relation to my committee, so I thought I'd probably better respond to some of those. I'm very grateful for any ward member who highlights a problem with a bin, because occasionally there are. There was one outside Shenfield School only last week, which suddenly was overflowing. Normally sort of problem, but I don't know what had been going on. But there was toilet roll all the way down Chelmsford Road. I had touch with the depot within 2 hours, all cleared up. There will always be the odd bin where there's a problem. Some of the pictures, and I saw Councillor Russell waving one on his phone, that wasn't an overflowing bin. That's surrounded by black bags. That's a fly tip. And you know, that's a problem right across the borough. Well, it's a fly tip every week, and it gets cleared up every week. So you know, you can wave the bit, we're on top of them. Quite often, I'll tell you what's happened, I've sent a picture of a bin in the morning of the day it's due to be emptied anyway. Now, we clearly do have 1 or 2 bins that are a persistent problem. We need to get on top of them. And we will. We're looking at the collection routine. We're looking at merging the open spaces and street bin collections because they're emptying, because they don't work together. They should be done together, and they're not done together. It'd be much more efficient if they are. You mentioned 1 or 2 other things. Pesticides. If you've been able to come to Clean and Green last week, Councillor Barber, you would have seen the up-to-date report on what we're doing with pesticides. So I suggest you read that and get yourself informed. Yes, weeds are a problem. Weeds have been quite a big problem this year. All the weeds in Shenfield High Street that you referred to were done on the week where we had the ward intensive ward programme earlier this year. Blow me, within about 6 weeks, we had 8-foot-high thistles growing up on the rockery by Hunter Avenue car park. Councillor Pound very kindly pointed those out to me. We could say that one person's weed is another person's flower. It's the national flower of Scotland. We could have said we were trying to make Scots visiting Shenfield very welcome, but that wasn't the case, and they've been done. Once pointed out, we're on top of it. We can't chase every weed every day, everywhere, but when there is a problem, we do move quickly, and I believe that the borough does look better as a result. So, yeah, please, any ward member, do tell us when there's a problem, and we will respond, and we have responded, and I believe we've got a track record of responding that we can be proud of.
Thank you, Councillor Minor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to come back in on the specific point that was made just now about the SHDP sites being behind because of the administration's net zero obsession. I mean, it's very easy to make those kinds of accusations. The reality is, if you look at a site like Brookfield Close, which has now come back, well, we've had it at planning committee 3 times. The last 2 times that it's come back, which obviously, you know, it's come back because things needed to be changed, and it can't go ahead before those agreements are made, those new planning decisions are made. First of all, it came back because of utilities underground, and the building needed to be moved, and you know, the utility company had told us that it was going to be that what they've got their stuff underground, and the building would need to be moved. And the second one of those had to do with new. Well, I mean, the buildings are now going to be knocked down. They weren't going to be knocked down originally, but it has to do with new equipment that needs to be in place effectively for safety reasons. Slight changes in cladding, and things to do with sprinkler systems, and therefore changes to the heights of rooms. Neither of those two things has to do with net zero. That's the reality as far as that site is concerned. Yes, we know there's a problem here, and everybody in this chamber would like to see things happen more quickly. But making those kinds of claims and claiming that that is the reason and that is the only reason doesn't stand up against what we've actually seen when it comes to specific sites. We would like to see those sites processed more quickly. Hopefully they will be.
Thank you, Councillor Minor. Councillor Kendall.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am personally very proud of this report. I think there's some very good things in there if you go through it in detail. If you look at the thriving, growing economy, which a large section comes under the responsibility of my committee, we've completed 3 of the projects. We've got 16 on target. We've got 1 that needs attention. If you look at key performance indicators, we're on target for 5. If you go through some of the specifics, we now have an economic development strategy. It's a shame none of the members opposite were at the business briefing last week that we held at Whalley Golf Club, which was attended by many local businesses, the Chamber and Brentwood Connected as well. And we had the launch of the business strategy and, more importantly, the action plan. And it had a very, very favourable reaction from those who were there. If you look at parking, we've made some significant improvements on parking. We now have the ANPR cameras in the multi-storey with the new ticket machine. We also have the new ticket machines and ANPR coming in October in William Hunter Way and in Chatham Way. And we also have the new parking app, which is proving very popular, particularly at places like King George's. These are real things that people can see. This is real action in progress. They're things people can touch. In terms of the high street, we've got 36 businesses now which have been helped by the UK FBS Prosperity Fund with their shopfront improvements. And that's fantastic to see. It's also great to see some shopkeepers taking initiatives themselves. Whittaker's, for example, it's a very popular cafe in the high street. Basically, the staff got together and they did it off their own back. And they refurbished all the interior and the exterior, and it looks fantastic. And they did it because they wanted to make a difference and show their customers that they wanted to improve their premises. So, as I say, I think we've got a lot of very positive things in there. As the leader has alluded to, we have got a good financial situation at the moment. Yes, we did have the sale of Childernitch, but also it was the way that was managed. And a lot of the credit for that should go obviously to our officers, but from a finance perspective, particularly to our Section 151 officer, because without his actions, the actions he took, we wouldn't be in quite as good a position as we are. So there is credit to the officers, there's credit to members, things are moving forward, there's some good stuff in here. Thank you.
Councillor Baldock.
Well, I'm too new to know what it was like before to compare it with what it's like now, and I'm not commenting on that. It was just a question, and to quote young Master Grace, I'm sure you've all done very well. Councillor Worsfold, you mentioned a phone number that you have for the depot to ask things to be done. Could I have that number? Because I thought we all had to raise everything through the portal.
That's really a question. Perhaps that's something you can take offline. I don't think it's really pertinent to this particular question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. I support this annual report. In my day job, I've had the fortune or misfortune to read many annual reports, both in the public and in the private sector. And I imagine that many members in this room have also had that experience. I won't comment on whether they found it pleasurable or difficult. Each of us must find such things as we treat them. What I will say is that I'm grateful to officers. We don't often say thank you to officers enough in this chamber, but I'd like to thank all the officers involved in the preparation of this report because they have very clearly put a great deal of work into it. And I know they will be listening to the scrutiny given to this report, and I hope they will take away the positives that have been reflected in this debate and not the negatives. Why do I think this is a good report? I think it's detailed. I think it's helpful. I think it's genuinely informative. I think it's clear, and those of us who work with words for a living recognise the value of clarity, just as Councillor Worsfold and I do in the communications that we do. And I think it's pretty comprehensive for what it is. And on that basis, leaving political drama aside, I commend it to residents. I commend it to my fellow councillors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Rigby. Bless you, Councillor Hurst. And Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to highlight a couple of things, really, to I think it's under Councillor Kendall's brief, just to highlight Whalley. We have the empty homes policy, don't we? And I just wondered if there is something that we could look at going forward, like empty shops policy, because if you take a wander up Whalley Hill these days, there's 3 shops within 100 yards that are all boarded up with wooden on the shop front. So I think it's the newsagent next to the Essex Arms, in between the Pizza Hut, and then you've got the Indian restaurant, which is on the corner, and then just a bit further up, used to be a sort of plumbing shop, electrical shop there. It's really bringing that street scene down, and I know in the report there is work to be done on the street scene with litter picking and stuff like that. But I understand that that's going to be a bigger piece of work, and what we can do to encourage landlords to get these shops into operation, and if they are going to be boarded up, is there a way that could make them look a little bit more attractive? Because it's the old broken window syndrome, isn't it? So just a little bit of positive feedback on that really is what I wanted to highlight. And lastly, in regards to some lovely photos here of various councillors pictured with new trucks and all sorts there. And there was a picture taken of the leader next to a Great Red, I think it was called, a tree that past Mayor, Councillor Haig and Councillor Aspinall planted in Hutton Park, which I understand was going to be a bit of a legacy, something that the grandchildren can see in the future that they'd planted there. It's succumbed, I'm afraid. It's covered in weeds and died. And there was a lot of money invested into maintaining that park with these trees. Lots of trees planted. You yourself, Councillor, would often ask me, I think 3 times, what's the attrition rate of the trees that we were planting? Sadly, most of those trees have died. So, I think we need to pay some attention to that. Otherwise, a very good report. Lots of aspirational, some good stuff in there. But tonight I'll be abstaining from voting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? In any case, return to Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to take a slightly different tone to some of the other members here. I think this is, while a positive document, it is in many ways a modest statement of our ambitions, our progress and what we want to achieve, and giving you and every other member here the ability to hold the senior officers and the chairs of those committees accountable for where we are and what we're doing according to our plan. I think that's a very positive aspect for members to reflect on, and that hasn't been done before, this level of personal ownership of a chair in the report. You've been challenging us tonight, but I would encourage you to challenge us more, because the advantage we have of these reports is to be challenged on what is good, what is bad, where is progress. So not only do we take the good, we take the challenge, we learn from it, and we improve. So I think it's a really positive item for us to have here. And in general, I also wanted to note there's parts in here where this is us delivering our corporate plan. There's elements that are beyond that we welcome the challenge for. Certainly there's elements of the legacy we received that are positive. There is elements of the legacy we received that were not so positive. But as we address them forward, that's within the framing of our corporate plan that we are public about, we are open about, and we are accountable for. And I hope you hold us to account for that as appropriate. Another factor I'd like to thank several officers in developing this and wider tracking mechanisms that are coming forward. So kind of working up, Shelley King, Sam Nicholson, Greg Campbell and Paul Birkinshaw all in turn have actually created a system where we can track where we are, how progress is being made, and in turn then make that public. We can filter down to a lower item, but for you can see where we are in the objective, what's the progress, where's the item, and where's the ownership. And I think it's a very good thing for democracy for us to put that in front of you today. And again, I welcome the challenge, and I hope for more going forward. And I believe it's the last time I'll definitely be speaking tonight. So at this stage, I'd also like to thank Mr. Birkinshaw for his time at Brentwood Borough Council and wish him good luck and a good future. I'm sure he goes on to better things, although arguably there's not much better than Brentwood. We are with Rochford. But nevertheless, good luck to Mr. Birkinshaw. Thank you very much. And this is an example of the progress that his role and the opportunity he's given us in terms of making us a better, more accountable, more democratic council. And I thank him for that. And I hope members have reviewed to at least not vote against this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Councillor Ashmore, would you like to sum up?
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. If Mr. Birkinshaw is not going to be with us at the extraordinary council meeting, then yes, I totally agree with everything my colleagues just said. That you heard the voice of reason there with Councillor Barrett.
I'm not that person.
I can't stretch to that after some of the things that I've been accused of. Now, I do not control BT or any part of it. I think the Mayor might have more influence than I in that regard. These things have been requested to be moved out of our high street. They're still there. We carry on. We have a go. We do something about it. The tree that former Mayor Mark Haig and I assisted planting was not paid for by us. Doesn't mean to say it shouldn't have died. If it's died, I want to know why. I want to know why it hasn't been maintained. I want to know why it was allowed to die beside a river, for goodness sake. It should have had all the moisture it needed. So there was something obviously wrong. It wasn't for my grandchildren. It was for a short-term growth because it's a bat willow. It was grown to be coppiced eventually so that we could produce bats out of it, or the cricket clubs could produce bats out of it, and we would get an income. And another one would have been planted in a few years' time near it to grow up, so we had a continual income, a lot of income. Right, that's thinking in the future. Yes, I will accept from Councillor Barber, and I will have always said that the Conservatives bought Childerditch with our complete, total backing. Unanimously, that was agreed. Now, the difference is, you had the opportunity while you were still in power here to sell it. You didn't. We took that opportunity, we took that brave decision at that time, and we used it to the best advantages of the people of Brentwood, and we are now reaping the rewards of that because we were brave enough to take that decision at that time. Going back to the High Street, I am pleased to announce that on the 5th of August this year, in this chamber, I believe it's 12 noon, there will be, at last, the multi-agency task force that will talk about everything to do with the High Street. Brentwood High Street and some of the roads leading into it and some of the alleyways and everything else, the pathways. It's taken so long because the key players in this, SEP, who will be looking at red routes and car parking enforcement, County Council Highways and enforcement have taken so long to be able to get together and agree to come. So we're meeting on the 5th of August in here, and you're more than welcome to attend and put forward everything we want to say about how we would like to see the High Street improved, how we can go about that, what we like to see in the future, and that is including the Bay Tree Centre improvements that hopefully will be another stage by then. Everyone is more than welcome. Just phone up, book your seats early, because I believe there's going to be quite a few people here. Mr. Mayor, I am happy to recommend this to the council. Oh, and one last thing. I credit my opposition number in Rochford, the new Conservative leader of Rochford, has recognised in the sheer just 2 months since she's been elected, the amount of work it takes for a councillor to do their job properly. There was, I believe, it was passed last night, a 250% increase in her salary, her allowances, and 140%, I believe, in other chairs and members, because they value the work that they do. I look forward to a chat with our officers here on how that will affect us in any way, shape or form. So, yes, Mr. Mayor, I thoroughly commend this to the Chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Aspinall. We will now vote on the recommendations on page 87 of the agenda. R1, that members note the annual report 2024-2025 as set out in Appendix A, which provides an update on progress to date against the corporate plan, priority deliverables, corporate projects and key performance indicators. All those for? Against? Abstain? Motion is carried. Now moving on to item 12, community governance reviews. The report begins on page 123 of the agenda. Mrs. Mayhew, anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've nothing to add, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayhew. Councillor Dr. Barrett, will you move recommendations, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, happy to move the recommendation. This indeed fills a gap in our committee terms of reference where no committee is responsible for initiating community governance reviews. Community governance reviews are exactly what they say on the tin. They are opportunities to review our community governance, parish and town councils. Section 1.6 of this report notes that the review of community governance recommended every 10 to 15 years. Well, it's been 23 years ago that the last change in our community governance occurred with the creation of West Horndon Parish Council and Ingraven Herringate Parish Council. So this may be a little overdue now, particularly with LGR pending and the potential opportunity for town and parish councils to play increasing roles in our community engagements. I just want to note that we have reported this to the parish councils through the Brentwood Parish Council grouping, and that Mr. Berkenshaw presented it there. And there was some fear about section 1.4, especially where it said the word merging, altering or abolishing parish councils. That is not the intention. If the committee decides to commission a community governance review, that would not be the intention. We will not be changing any current parish councils against their will. It will be looking at the unparished areas and seeing if they do, the residents there, and want to get any additional parish councils or town councils as we move through to LGR. Obviously, any recommendations that a community governance review presents will be presented back to this full council for consideration. Thank you very much, and hope you can support it.
Thank you, Councillor Dr. Barrett. Do you have a seconder?
I second that, Mayor, and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Now open the item up to debate. Would anyone like to speak on the item? Councillor Hurst.
Sorry, please. Just to say, from my perspective, I think it's a good idea to be doing this review. I mean, it dovetails so much into what we were talking earlier about the area councils and making sure that we have got a representation of the borough. I think parish councils and town councils are going to be increasingly important as we go forward. They won't be replicating what district councils do. Let's not fool ourselves. That's not the purpose. We are going to have unitary councils with the statutory powers, but there is certainly a strong place for parish councils as a voice for the local community. There's a strong place for parish councils as custodians of key assets. We may wish to consider what that means for us as a borough council as we are subsumed into whatever future entity it may be, and which of those things are probably better governed more locally and which are better governed at a higher unitary level. But I think doing this review is going to be a positive step forward. And we just need to recognise that parish councils are a way of caring for the very local community, making sure that we understand priorities, problems, issues and what needs resolving. And if we can do this review, as Councillor Barrett was saying, not with a mind to abolition, but with a mind to fostering, nurturing, developing and strengthening, then I think it's a very commendable thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hurst. Councillor Rick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm grateful for Councillor Hurst's comments, as indeed I am for those of Councillor Dr. Barrett and Councillor Davies. In many ways, this report forms a part of the other reports we've seen tonight in the agenda in terms of taking us where we are, where we're going to be, but also looking at how we're currently represented in outside organisations and other bodies. And I think that that's an important way in which we approach our policies in an integrated way as a council. I sustain what Councillor Hurst says, and I think that somebody who is in an unparished area, it's something that we should be looking at. Good governance is obviously something that I welcome and relish in my current role, and that applies equally for those at the very lowest tier of government, and I commend it to members for approval.
Thank you. Councillor Rigby. Councillor Pott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I not actually want to talk to this item. It was actually when I mentioned earlier on agenda item 10 that I thought it was funny to have this on the same agenda as item 12. It wasn't this one I was talking about. It's obviously I've got the original 9th of July one, and my item 12 is the expressions of interest in the new towns, and that's what I was talking about. Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you for clearing up, Councillor Poppy. Councillor Minor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I just wanted to say very quickly, given that I said previously in the council chamber, there was a previous occasion when I was somewhat facetiously criticising Councillor Hurst in relation to things that had been said about how much local democracy costs and the amount of people involved and the size of organisations. I just wanted to say I think it's extremely positive, and it's not unexpected, but I think it's extremely positive to hear cross-party support for proper local representation, because what's facing us in terms of local government reorganisation obviously means that the replacement authority for this authority will be covering a much larger area and won't be able to have the local focus that an organisation this has. Obviously, there will be a very much more significant potential role for much more local organisations as a result of that. And it's the sort of thing that one would hope is going to be cross-party supported, and it's extremely positive to hear that cross-party support. And I wanted to somewhat apologise to Councillor Hurst for what I'd said in the past. He was duly irritated by it. We had a conversation outside afterwards. It was somewhat facetious, but I just wanted to say it's really good to hear what you're saying tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Minor, for those salutary remarks. So, anyone else wish to speak? I'll return to Councillor Davies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I welcome this report. It links to the previous item, and it brings up to date a long overdue parish council governance report. I would just like to sort of think that many parish councillors are not elected, they're co-opted. And I think as we go through, that has to come across to the people that get engaged in this to make them understand that really, and going forward, part of this governance is going to be elections will be needed and people will need to be democratically elected into those positions.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Dr Barrett.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Nothing more to add. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now vote on recommendations on page 123 of the agenda, that all matters relating to community governance reviews are delegated to the Housing, Health and Communities Committee and incorporated in that committee's terms of reference, except those functions already reserved to full council, as set out in the report. All those for? Thank you. The motion is carried. We now move on to item 13, expression of interest to New Towns Task Force. The report begins on page 127 of the agenda. We have a motion on the same matter as this item. It has been agreed that Councillor Russell, mover of the motion, will move his motion during the debate. Mr Birkinshaw, have you anything to add?
Just briefly, Mr Mayor, this report presents the response submitted to a call for evidence from the New Towns Task Force that was received on the 4th of November. Appendix A sets out the letter launching that call for evidence from the Chair of the New Towns Task Force, Sir Michael Lyons, and Appendix B sets out the response that was submitted to that. Nothing further to add, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Birkinshaw. Councillor Aspinall, would you move the recommendations, please? You have 5 minutes to speak.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I do move both recommendations, I believe. It's 1 and 2, yes. And in doing so, I'd like just to add that there had been some talk from developers in Thurrock prior to this coming out, and that a well-known developer who also has options or owns land outside of the railway bridge in West Haldon was going to put up 5,000 houses with immediate effect, or that was being offered to Thurrock Council to their planning. Now, one can only guess why Thurrock was in need of some money at that time. To take such a drastic step, as this was Virgin Greenbelt land, and it was opposite a railway station in Brentwood. That was about 6 months prior to this, maybe even longer, maybe the year before. Then this came up, and I was informed that there was an expression, there was an opportunity to express an interest in a New Towns project that was coming, that would affect Brentwood. The leader of Essex County Council thought this was obviously an ideal opportunity to see what the government had on offer, because he signed up to it immediately. The leader of Basildon Council and Thurrock Councils both did, as did I, on the reasons that I've stated, that I did not want to see anything happening to Brentwood that we didn't have a foot in the game, that we knew what was coming our way, to see if there was any benefit whatsoever to Brentwood Borough that the government had to offer. And so rather than just ignore it, I wanted to know if there was a benefit for us. And that's what I did. I expressed an interest. And I'm more than happy to move the recommendations before you. I'm sure I'll speak again later.
Thank you, Councillor Aspinall. Do you have a seconder?
Second that, Mr Mayor, reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Councillor Russell, do you wish to speak? Or do you wish...
I figured we'd hear some of the debate before.
Thank you, Councillor. We will now move to debate. Councillor Chinnery.
Mr Mayor, thank you. Since the 1990s, when many in this chamber were already on the property ladder, housing costs have doubled compared to income. We now face a crisis with a shortage of at least 4 million homes. Thousands of Brentwood residents under 40 have been priced out of owning a home, not because they made poor choices, but simply because they were born later, me being one of them. Many now realise they'll be worse off than their parents, and trust me, that is a deeply disheartening thought. And while residents rightly blame excessive immigration and numbers must come down, this housing crisis is not caused by future arrivals. It comes from decades of failing to build enough homes while legal migration soared. We might also point to Labour's failure to deliver enough homes in our biggest cities, especially London. But the truth is, given the scale of the housing crisis, every area must accept more development. So Britain must build properly again to give a new generation the security of owning a home and a sense of belonging I care deeply as a Conservative. Now, I'm going to be very unpopular by saying what I'm about to say, but that will mean exceeding Labour's current national housing targets. It means challenging outdated, almost biblical planning terms, parliamentary reforms to the planning system, and making proper investments in infrastructure. Tonight, whatever the council decides is going to be a gamble, and I feel quite conflicted about this. Do we press ahead with a new town that's very, very vague? We don't know much about. Is 20,000 homes, are they going to be beautiful? Are the communities going to be functional? Are people going to live there, work, enjoy life? And what influence will we have in moulding that? I don't know. It all seems very vague. And the questions the opposition have about the process and what happens in the next years as we form this are really, really valid. And as much as I care about development, I don't know what this new town projects will look like. But if we say no, as I know many here are on my side are inclined to, we must commit to finding better alternatives to deliver the thousands of more homes we need locally. Now, I know with local government reorganisation, there will be spatial plans soon. That will be refreshing. I know that the LDP will be revised soon. That could be a good opportunity. But we need to commit to actually being open and happy about developing more, building with thought, building beautifully, because at the moment, being the youngest member of this chamber at present, it is really difficult and quite isolating trying to put this crisis across. And whatever happens tonight, there are valid arguments on either side, although I'm very sceptical about the new town at heart. I think we must commit to developing and tackling the housing crisis in a way we have not done before. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Murphy.
I'm very, I want to be part of an organisation where things are transparent. We hear a lot about that here tonight. And in the spirit of tonight and how we've spoken earlier, I think it's very, very important that everybody knows at every stage what's going on, especially ward councillors. Ward councillors are the ones that face the public. We have to go down to the parish council meetings, look at our parish people that voted for us, look them in the eye and give them bad news. Bad news is unpalatable to everybody. But if you are well informed and you can go down and give people options and give people the ability to be able to feed into these things, it makes it more palatable. We've got Dunton coming up. Now, already down in our patch, we've accepted this. It was never, ever going to be popular, but over time, and with talking with the parish councillors, it's acceptable. This thing we're talking about here has absolutely blown the roof off of any progress anybody could make to get to the people that really live there. There's 1,900 of them whose lives are going to be totally and utterly transformed and not for the better. Is this going to be a new town? Is it not? I want to know a lot more about it before I decide, or I've even got the ability to be able to go down and speak to the residents about it. I feel so very strongly about it. I don't care who knew, what and when, but it would be very nice in the future if all councillors could be able to be given bad news, if it is bad news, and let us be able to articulate to our residents how passionate we all are about their futures. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Easily. I made my statement at the beginning, declared an expression of interest. The next thing that happened is we had a conversation, not we, officers with the New Homes Task Force. They were fully briefed. They spoke to the administration as well as the leader and deputy leader of the opposition, of which time, at that time, you were part of. They gave a full briefing to your leader and deputy leader and was told, in no uncertain terms, that you can fully brief your group. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened after that.
I certainly don't want to hear that word in the chamber. Thank you, Councillor Russell.
I am not
so if you'd like to
telling
withdraw that
untruths,
particular
and
word
it
that
is
you just
written
used. Councillor
in this
Aspinall,
report.
thank you for your clarification. I think to some degree it did go on and on, but we don't use the word untruth. We don't speak in those kind of terms. I hope you'll withdraw that particular one.
I'll withdraw untruth, but I'm stating that that was not the events that happened.
Yeah, well, I think that's between you and the leader. I think there's a disparity between opinions. So thank you. Councillor Barber, did you wish to? You're down to speak. Are you?
Yeah,
looking
it's
to
a
add
personal clarification, Mr. Mayor, because I've just been named by the council leader. The council leader has asserted what happened in a meeting which he did not attend. It was an opposition briefing with the senior officers representing the chief executive. I'd like to ask Mr. Birkinshaw to confirm that not only did I email him and his colleagues, ask him for clarity as to when we could share the information with the opposition group, but that email was not answered, and we had to send subsequent chasers saying, did you receive this email? And the email was described as being misplaced. Eventually, months later, we were told that effectively the information was in the public domain, and at that point, we were able to share with our group. So it isn't right to say that because we were told in a confidential briefing in March, with an email coming in at the end of February, that we were able to tell our group within the council what was happening and share that information. So could Mr. Birkinshaw please confirm that?
Mr Mayor, probably difficult in some respects. You were asking me to refer to emails that I've not necessarily had chance. It'd be wrong for me to assert either way. We certainly did have correspondence around that time, and in terms of Councillor Barber did raise in terms of the ability to share the information publicly. I feel uncomfortable in responding directly to the question because I would need to consider the emails which are being referred to, and I don't wish to mislead council either way by providing an ill-informed, quick response immediately, but happy to respond to that point following the meeting once I've had a chance to consider those emails.
Okay, I think that we've addressed how that will be continued with. Councillor Poppy.
I don't want to talk on the subject of whether there's going to be a new town or there's not going to be a new town. I think Councillor Chinnery's spoken very passionately about the problem for youngsters to be buying houses or receiving houses even from council. on the basis that no government, whether it be blue, red or, well, yellow's not been done, has it, have actually built any houses over the last 50 years. So that's a kind of immaterial. The thing I want to talk about is the transparency that we keep hearing from this side of the side of the fence. A few council meetings that I've been to recently or watched on TV, one particular one I watched with a couple of friends from the city was and I'll tell you, it was a planning meeting, which is where we get the most residents in the room or watching on the TV or whatever it might be. And this was one for Shenfield, 2 hours, and the chair could not bring himself to say the words that he wanted to move it for approval. So for the second time in consecutive council meetings, there's a 20-minute break while they all go down the corridor there. I know the officers now call it the decision corridor. And then it comes back and someone actually says something. But that 20 minutes is not transparent. No one knows what's going on. There's not a debate going on. There's not a conversation going on. I do sometimes feel that some of the committees these days are led by the officers. I think this was probably led by the officers. I feel sorry for Mr Birkinshaw having to sit there because our CEO is missing in action yet again.
Councillor Poppy,
I think we need to kind of stick to the subject of this debate here.
I am. It's transparency. The thing here is there's a transparent line. It was in the papers in Thurrock in July last year. This says that we signed the expression of interest in November last year. No one heard about it. Even the two deputy leaders didn't know about it until probably February or March. It's ridiculous. Someone needs to really kind of look at themselves, whether it's the officers, whether it's the CEO, whether it's the leader, needs to look at themselves and go, we shouldn't have done this. We shouldn't have done this without residents knowing. The reason I made the comparison with, going back to Gareth's thing on the assemblies, West Horndon Parish Council should have at least been told or at least been spoken to. Thank you very much, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The New Towns Task Force calls for evidence from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government published on November the 4th last year. Please set out in your submission the extent of local support for each potential development. Along with, please indicate in your submission if any of the information you have submitted is sensitive and should not be shared outside the task force, MHCLG. I am not aware of the extent of local support. I am aware, however, that the ward councillors and the parish councillors were not consulted on the expression of interest. Furthermore, I am not aware that the Brentwood submission indicated that any of the information submitted was sensitive or if this should not be shared outside of the task force, MHCLG. The report states on page 130 when the Leader of the Opposition and the Deputy Leader of the Administration were informed, but does not advise why all members were not informed or why there has not been an all-member briefing. As a comparison, Rochford District councillors in their local press advised in February they were unhappy at the lack of transparency regarding their new town expression of interest, with Rochford District Council then submitting information on their website in March 25, confirming Rochford District Council and Southend-on-Sea City Council officers had submitted a joint expression of interest in November 24. There are officers here tonight who are aware of the discontent at the lack of transparency at Rochford District Council, who, at an estimate, and here I will quote Councillor Dr G Barrett, who have between them combined Councillor Aspinall and Councillor Chinnery years of experience. Yet of all this experience, they did not provide the same level of transparency to all members here in Brentwood, and I personally am still awaiting answers from an officer to the technical questions I submitted regarding the new town's expression of interest. With regards to recommendation 2, which advises if a new town is taken forward, it must contribute towards local housing needs targets as set out in the MPPF.
I am aware that my employer asked Angela Rayner in the House of Commons on April 7th, can the Secretary of State confirm whether Newtown houses on the Rochford side would go towards our meeting the target or be in addition to it?
30 seconds.
Angela Rayner replied, we have been clear that the new towns will deliver will be over and above the targets for housing produced through the standard methods. Therefore, if I've understood this correctly, it would appear the Secretary of State has confirmed the new towns will be in addition to housing needs and not contribute towards. If this is correct, please could the officers clarify how members here tonight can approve recommendation 2? Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Russell. Indicated to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor. Mr. Mayor, I think Councillor Slade is waiting for the answer to the question that she put. Do you want to read it again?
I've asked if it's correct with Angela Rayner confirming that the targets will be in addition, how can officers clarify how the members here tonight can approve recommendation 2?
Councillor, I think Councillor Barrett.
As a point of information, the Housing Minister Matthew Pennycock appeared before the House of Lords Select Committee on New Towns Task Force, where he confirmed, while it was Angela Rayner's, it was her presumption that it would be over and above, he confirmed that is under review and no decision has been made. So that is confirmed on parliamentary record that the New Towns Task Force will conclude that when the report comes out in September. So that's our headroom, if that's helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, let's just focus on the facts here. The facts are that this submission was made in December 2024. The facts are that it was done between officers, the Chief Executive and the Leader of the Council. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, only one councillor out of 39 was asked whether we should submit an expression of interest in a new town within the borough to the New Towns Task Force. Now, I think that's fundamentally against the Nolan principles. I remember, before I became a councillor, watching poor Councillor Murphy have to chair that dreadful meeting down at the Brentwood Centre. The people were turning up with their placards and they were being heard, and it was quite, quite tempestuous, shall we say. But it was open. It was transparent. This evening, you've asked this new organisation we're setting up to be transparent in all its dealings. Now, I've got a lot of respect for people across the chamber. Many of you have stood on platforms of representing your residents, and you do it with great skill and panache. But this has been done without the consent and involvement of the people of Brentwood, which is why we're here. It's why we get elected. I just want you to imagine that rather than poor West Horndon, this development was actually on your doorstep, next to your residents in Pilgrim's Hatch, in Shenfield, in Brentwood South, in Brentwood West, in South Weald, in Doddinghurst. Just imagine it isn't south of the A127 and it's on your doorstep. How would your residents react? And I want you to react as you would if that was the case. Angela Rayner did say very clearly in Hansard that that the new town targets were over and above the figures from central government. That is, Councillor Russell brought across a copy of Hansard which stated that, and that was in answer to the Radio and Wickford MP Mark Francois' question 2 on the 7th of April. So I think we're lacking transparency. It's not about whether you're pro-housing or anti-housing, because I actually was very in favour of the Garden City. Sorry, Sheila. But I was, because we have to meet our housing targets. I get that. But we did it in the public domain. We all took the shots from the public when they're unhappy with having that debate publicly. There is no point saying that you told people 2 or 3 months after you sent the letter. It's too little, too late.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. We've got 20 minutes before the guillotine, so extending this debate will potentially cause issues later on the agenda. Councillor Rigby. Councillor Rigby, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, I've read the paper. Let me add some words as to how I see it. Obviously, you've heard from the Leader of the Council. You've heard from the opposition. Now, there's been a lot of talk about officers, what they did, what they haven't done, emails, and so on. From my perspective, I think officers, and I think the paper shows this, it's a quite good detailed paper, acted within their delegated authority. And I think they followed the procedures. And they did consult, clearly, with the Leader of the Council. Now, I don't see this as a policy decision that required full council approval. It was a response to a government call for evidence. It was an expression of interest, no more, no less. Now, a policy decision, well, that's a bit different. That would have involved committing to a specific development. But here, this was an expression of interest, an exchange of information. It was providing information as requested. So what does that actually mean? Well, I mean, the way I read it, we were providing information as requested, and we took that opportunity, and we ensured that we, the council, had a seat at the table at a very early stage in what were regional, cross-authority planning decisions. And now here we are, discussing it openly, robustly, at full council. Now, surely, that is how local democracy works. We take exploratory steps when opportunities arise, and then we bring them to a public forum, this public forum, for scrutiny and debate. And there's been no lack of scrutiny, and there's been no lack of debate. The alternative, what would have the alternative been? Just ignore it. Ignore the call for evidence, and then risk having decisions
30 seconds,
taken
Councillor.
about our borough without our input. That's not how we represent our residents' interests. I think the administration has done the accountable thing, the responsible thing, and it's acting in the best interests of Brentwood. I endorse the Leader's approach, and I hope others will do so also. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there's two parts to this, isn't there? There's the development, whether you're pro it or you're against it. There's the expression of interest, and there's the scrutiny, and there's the transparency. So there's two parts to it. Now, ignore it? No, that's definitely not something that we'd want to do. What we'd want to do is go through the process, follow due diligence, bring it to council, and have those answers questioned. Will it account? Will it account to our quota from the government? What does it look like? Who are the partners involved? And we bring it to council, and we then decide and make a judgment. What we've been elected to do on behalf of our residents, we then make a decision. Mr. Mayor, the heckling, if we could just stop that, that'd be great. We then can make an informed decision. What's very dangerous is one man making the decision on behalf of all these members and all the residents out there. One person. That's very dangerous. Now, whether it's officers that have misled the leader, whether it didn't fully... If I may, I'll withdraw that. Let's just say there is that suspicion. There was someone said earlier on about officers leading running the show.
I think we need to curtail this
I'll move
level
on,
of
if I may.
language, please, Councillor.
Sorry. So there's some suggestions going on, and I think what's...
Sorry, no suggestions.
Right.
We'll move
I'll
on
retract that then. If I may, I'm just losing my thread because of all the heckling, Mr. Mayor. What I think we'll do is, if I move the motion to withdraw our interest, because let's face it, this is going to cost £48 billion to develop 12 new towns. £48 billion. And quite frankly, don't know where that money is going to come from. So whether it's going to be in Brentwood, whether it's going to be somewhere else, I don't know. But there is nothing here for us to be voting. I think for the sake of transparency, we should withdraw our expression of interest. And I apologise for any untoward language that I used earlier on, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So the motion is do you have a seconder?
I'm happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. And so thank you. Does the mover wish to accept the amendment? So now we move to debate upon the amendment. Councillor Barber has seconded. Do you wish? So, Councillor Dr. Barrett, do you wish to?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I was going to talk on the substantive motion, so can we wait for the debate on the amendment and then I will speak on the substantive motion? Thank you.
Does anyone wish to speak to the amendment? Councillor Worsfold.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I'm glad we've got to what I think is the important part of this debate, which is whether we should be in the tent or outside the tent. Councillor Chinnery spoke very eloquently at the beginning of this debate about the need to influence the shaping of developments. If we withdraw our expression of interest, we lose that influence. We have no say. We will find that this development will be driven by developers. And frankly, I've seen in Shenfield, with the debates around the land north of Shenfield, what happens when the developers take over and they're in the driving seat. We had fragmented proposals coming forward, no coordination, developers playing fast and loose with the proposed community benefits, which we've lost because of the uncoordinated approach, and all the issues about the critical infrastructure, transport, schools, hospitals, all of that was lost because of the fragmented approach, because there wasn't a coordinated approach that we got hold of, got a grip of from the start. And if you think that's over, let me tell you, the nightmare of the consequences of that is just about to start. In the next year or so, there have got to be 5 junctions built between the Mount Nessing roundabout and Alexander Lane. 3 crossings have got to be built between the Mount Nessing roundabout and Alexander Lane. In that short stretch of Alexander Lane that is in Shenfield Ward, there have got to be 3 junctions, 1 crossing and 1 chicane, and possibly... It is. I'm trying to give you an example of what happens if you're not in the... I'm giving you an example of what happens if you don't get in the tent early on and get a grip of these infrastructure issues. Brentwood and Shenfield will grind to a halt in the next few years because of the failure to address these key infrastructure issues to start with. That's why we need to retain our expression of interest in this. We need to be there at the table as these plans are formed. If it goes ahead, 3 local authorities will be there pressing their residents' interests, and we won't be if we accept this amendment. We'll be outside. We'll be the poor cousins looking in from outside the window. That's what the opposition is asking us to do, and that would be wrong, and that's why we've got to reject this amendment.
Thank you. Now, we're now advancing quite late into the evening. We've got several speakers just on the amendment. So if I can ask councillors to be as succinct as possible, so we can move on to the later part of the agenda. So we have Councillor Parker next to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Mayor, I beg your pardon. I've got a statement to make, but listening to Councillor Rigby and the recent speaker, Councillor Rigby's flowery way of talking about how to mishandle our rules and regulations that go on in this chamber are completely wrong and, in fact, complete rubbish. As far as Shenfielder is concerned, the developers followed the rules. You find out what the rules are about infrastructure and then you can talk about it. You've got it completely wrong. The fact that this motion has had to be put before this meeting means that what is considered normal procedure for such an action has not been adhered to. I was going on to say I'm not aware how the decision to put Brentwood's council's name to the letter of intent to the new town's workforce came about, but our leader has told me that he took it upon himself to make that decision. So perhaps we can use that, take that as fact. I can only assume officers and the front bench of the administration took the decision. Obviously they did not, to put forward such an agreement other councils in relation to a new town. This should only have been made at full council and not excluding nearly 50%. That's if the administration members also knew about the letter. There was no delegated authority in place. Somebody suggested there was, there wasn't. In place, so the action is without doubt a serious disregard to the workings of this council. I believe there can be no excuse for the action taken. Not only was the action taken wrongly, but the government have made it perfectly clear any new town would not lower the numbers required in the present LDPs, or the new ones that are being worked on at this time by the councils concerned in the letter of intent. The government have made it abundantly clear that new town numbers would never be over and above the numbers already allocated in the present and new LDPs. This was confirmed, as it's been said previously, by the MP Mark Francois asking the Deputy Prime Minister, who categorically said over and above. In the current LDPs and the numbers that borough districts and unitaries are now being asked to build, has the members or officials concerned with adding Brentwood, this new town interest, bothered to do the maths surrounding the new town interest? Brentwood current LDP 7,500, new 14,500. Thurrock current 25,000, new 30,000. Basildon similar numbers. The government's additional numbers suggested for new towns is suggested between 10,000 and 20,000.
Thank you, Councillor. That's your time.
I'll just finish if I may ask questions beforehand. With what was already existing in the 127 corridor, I estimate that we'll have
Councillor, you
houses
had your allotted time. Thank you.
Sorry?
You've had your allotted time. Thank you. We've got a lot of people on the list. You have your allotted time. Thank you. Councillor Aspinall is next.
Sorry.
Made by Councillor Worsfold. I'll speak later.
Councillor Hurst.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to speak in favour of Councillor Russell and Councillor Barber's amendment. I think, yeah, I absolutely agree with what Councillor Chillery and Councillor Murphy said earlier. we need new housing, and we need it to be sympathetic, and we need to be able to be in a position to maintain the character and nature of our communities and of our green belt. But we're in a mess. And we're in a mess partly just because of the way this was done. I'm sure it's not intentional, but we are in a mess. We have an opportunity coming up next May. We have a new mayor. That mayor will have the power to write a strategic economic development plan, a strategic housing plan, a strategic transport plan, and a strategic skills plan. Those plans are going to be for our county. This fragmentation of us deciding one thing, Thurrock wanting another, Basildon wanting a third, Rochford wanting another, it's across the entire county. It's not just here that we're in a mess. We are in a mess. We need a proper plan. We need a plan which is going to make sure that our homes are backed with infrastructure. We need to make sure that nothing is going up without the schools, without the surgeries, without the roads, without the sewerage, without the flood planning that we really need. We need a plan which is really going to be sympathetic and make sure that we keep the character of what is a wonderful county. And this borough and our villages have some real attractions. They are absolutely gorgeous. People move here, like me, because it's just such a good place to be. Yeah. Let's not ruin that by trying to run after other people's plans. Let's reject this now. We are going to see the other plans that are in hand also, I'm sure, reviewed, revised, possibly suspended, because there is going to have to be a coherent and coordinated plan where we are going to make sure that we are seeing our town centres invested in, actually get vibrancy back into where we already have infrastructure, transport, cafes, and we can do more business and have more homes there. We don't need to go for new towns which are speculative ventures because it's cheap to put the infrastructure in there. Because we can have a deal with a landowner where they get less money for their land on redesignation from Greenbelt into development land than they otherwise would do, so we can build a new road. Let's make much better use of what we've got, improve it, make it thrum, boost it, make it thrive, and there's a real opportunity for that coming next May. It's not very far away. We'll get nowhere with this between now and next May. Let's pull this, start again, and do it properly coordinatedly across the county with our partners. Thank you.
Point of information, Mr. Mayor, are you guillotining this?
No. We're just going to get to that point. Yeah. Under 8.3.11, extension of meeting after 3 hours and 15 minutes. That the meeting continues beyond 3 hours and 15 minutes and for a specified period of time.
Someone needs to move that. Do you want to do that, or do you want to go to the guillotine?
Would someone like to move that we extend the meeting for 15 minutes? And do you have a second? Yeah. So we move on to the extent. All those in favour? Okay. Continuing with the debate, we have Councillor Minor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm afraid there's a lot of misleading things being said, sometimes designedly, sometimes not designedly. Let's just get into the reality of what's going on here. There's a fundamental sequence issue in terms of what's being claimed. The claim seems to be, as far as what went on, that the council somehow initiated something, and having initiated something, it has unforgivably failed to say anything to local representatives and local residents about it. Obviously, that is absolutely not what has happened here. The council did not initiate something. The council did not initiate, for instance, the New Homes Task Force process. It also didn't initiate the fact that developers on the far side of the boundary in the Thurrock area wanted to build enormous amounts of new housing. That wasn't something that this council did. It wasn't something that this council made a decision on. So what was happening was, not that this council pushed a ball and didn't tell anybody about it, but that a ball was already rolling. Rolling in two different ways. First of all, rolling because developers were pushing to do something Secondly, rolling because the government wanted to do something and they were talking about a process. Now, both of those were to some extent public processes. What the government wanted to do was a public process, and the fact that developers were circling and wanted to build huge amounts of new housing in the Western Horndon area wasn't public because it wasn't obviously being done by a public authority, but it was something that various people would have known about. So none of that was secretive. What's happened here is that the council is responding to that. And what's being asked by the amendment is that the council shouldn't respond to that. A ball should continue rolling, which we have no control over and no chance to even watch because we're not involved in the process. That's what's being asked for by this amendment. There's also an extremely dangerous series, and it's repeatedly happening, extremely dangerous series of direct comparisons with what happened then and a decision-making process by this council, which absolutely would have to come to a meeting like this and would have to come to full council. But it wasn't a decision-making process. It was an expression of interest, as already been said. We've had a direct comparison tonight with the final decision-making process of the local plan. I mean, it's the most different thing that you could possibly imagine. Two totally different entities, absolute chalk and cheese. No comparison between those things. We are not deciding to build or not build new houses tonight. We certainly weren't deciding to build or not build new houses back in November. It wasn't a decision-making process. That's why it didn't come to a meeting. That's why it didn't need to come to a meeting. And that's why it was perfectly acceptable for officers within officers' remits to be leading the process.
We have 3 more people wishing to speak. However, it's kind of come to a time, and I feel we probably need to go back to the to conclude the motion. So, Councillor Barbie, you were seconded. Do you reserve your right to speak?
Thank you. I'll try and stick to the facts. So the facts are that this is a mistake, what has been done by the council in our name. We have had many meetings where we've actually sat in pink sessions. If there was any confidential or secrecy reasons for not sharing it with the public, you could have done it in a session with councillors in pink. You didn't. There really is no information in any of the letters that have been shared with us which couldn't have been shared with the public, because they're being shared now with no problem. This is about the lack of transparency and openness. It's contrary to the Nolan principles. I agree with Councillor Chinnery. I'm worried about the quality of the build of a new town being parachuted in by a government that wants to build houses very quickly. How many of us have had concerns, legitimate concerns, about office blocks being turned into HMOs and the quality of life for the people that live there? We're all the guardians of Brentwood. If you honestly allow one individual to decide whether you want a new town in your borough, then why are you actually asking the community for their feedback? Because you're not even consulting and engaging with them on the really important issues. Loads of you know, horses not houses. Do you remember that phrase? I've seen it on many leaflets. Yeah, but you're not actually thinking. Has anyone actually got large numbers of residents who are in favour of this new town coming to West London? I bet you Councillor Murphy and Councillor Marsh and Councillor Baldock haven't. Please think about your ward. If you can't vote with us, at least abstain and make us actually take this off the table. All the numbers are additive. There is no new infrastructure. The local development plan process is the one where you can liaise with neighbouring councils about the impact of your development on their development, and that's the one that comes back with an infrastructure plan as well. So you can do it all through the LDP. You don't need a new town from the New Towns Commission. Thank you very much.
Councillor Russell, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I was trying to say earlier on, that there are lessons to be learned of this process. We wouldn't be here now if we'd followed due process. There is an investigation at Southend and at Rochford looking into this and how it's worked out. So we'll sit back and see how they get on there and refer back to it then. This is not being out of the tent. This is not being out of the tent of the local authorities and the developer. This is actually getting in bed with the developers. This is what this is. Because the developers cannot do anything. The local authorities, they cannot realise this dream without us. So if we withdraw it, they will have to come to us and knocking on our door, saying, please, will you help us? It happens all day long. I see it all day long. So what this is actually doing is let's pull this out. As Councillor Hurst said, we'll have new mayor in May, and there we can look at the strategic planning across the county, put the houses where they are needed rather than on Greenbelt, just because it's convenient for developers. Let's do it that way.
Thank you, Councillor Russell.
Mayor, if I may, you said before we come in that you were going to police the meeting well, and so there's not heckling, and I appreciate there's been some heckling on our side, but I constantly get distraction from my left, and I would appreciate if you'd curtail that, please.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. I was trying to listen to you rather than listen to other things. Councillors on both sides of the aisle, please resist the urge to speak out of turn. We can listen to councillors when they speak. So we now go to the vote.
Mr Mayor, may I request a recorded vote?
Councillor Border, I recognise that you need to, you wanted to speak. However, we time.
Would a ward councillor not be given an opportunity?
Indeed so. Ordinarily, we've gone through the rounds. We've had a lot of speakers on a very emotive item, and we still we may return to the substantive item in due course, depending on how this vote goes. But you've asked for a recorded vote. All those in favour?
Yeah.
Thank you, members. Can you please state for, against or abstain when I call your name? Councillor LaPlane.
Against.
Councillor Nikki Cuthbert.
Against.
Councillor Aspinall. Councillor Baldock. Councillor Barber. Councillor Gareth Barrett.
Against.
Councillor Dr Barrett.
Against.
Councillor Chinnery. Councillor Martin Cuthbert.
Against.
Councillor Davis.
Against.
Councillor Fulcher. Councillor Gelderbloom. Councillor Gibson. Councillor Gordon. Councillor Gorton. Councillor Haigh. Councillor Hurst. Councillor Gerard. Councillor Kendall.
Against.
Councillor Lewis. Councillor Marsh. Councillor Mayo. Councillor McShane. Councillor Murphy. Councillor Minot. Councillor Parker. Councillor Patel. Councillor Poppy. Councillor Pound. Councillor Rigby. Councillor Russell. Councillor Sankey. Councillor Sangha. Councillor Worsfold. Thank you, Mr Mayor. That is 16 for and 18 against. The amendment is lost.
Thank you. We return to the substantive motion. Again, we've come to the end of that debate. I know there's other people wishing to speak. Councillor Baldock, would you like to speak?
Thank you. Look, it's just fundamentally wrong not to have consulted the residents, the parish council, the ward councillors. I know there's long speeches and God knows what else, but it's just fundamentally wrong. How can I look them in the eye and say, yeah, you weren't told, I wasn't told? They would ask, what's the point of me? And I haven't got an answer. We should be told. It's fundamentally that. That was it.
Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, sir. Mr. Assistant Patton, please. We can get on with the rest of the debate. So I know, thank you. Sorry, I know we had other speakers on the substantive debate. We've got 5 minutes and... Okay, Councillor Dr. Barrett.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be quick. I just remind everyone that Essex also supported this declaration of interest, and please hold them to the same standards you have. I didn't see any motion at the recent county council election from the 3 Conservative county councillors for Brentwood that to remove their expression of interest. Obviously, you're passionate about it. I'm sure you'll reflect that in your vote for your nomination of mayor, because obviously she didn't bring a motion forwards. I just wanted to make sure that you hold those together. I just want to say it's an expression of interest. We are interested. The developers can put this forward on their own. So we are interested. That's what, when you get an insurance quote for a car, you give them their information, your information, they give you yours. You get a quote. You decide once you've got a quote. We haven't even got a quote yet. We've just put an expression of interest in. We wait until we hear back. We've got a condition that we've already got a red line. That's our recommendation too. But when we hear the rest of the information, we can make an informed decision. We are literally debating this now, in the open. How more transparent? I mean, it's on the agenda. It's put on the agenda by the administration. I don't understand the point. Everything is in the report. It's quite clear. The expression of interest has gone in. We'll wait to hear back before we make a decision. We haven't made one yet.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Councillor Davis, you reserve your right to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, I'll be honest, do I want a town built on the borders of our borough? No, I don't. But as someone who's served this community for many years, I've always believed our first responsibility as councillors is to ensure that Brentwood's voice is heard loud and clear, whatever decisions are being made about our future. We cannot afford to sit back and let others dictate what happens in our borough, whether it's neighbouring councils, private developers, or even central government. We're not in the room. If we're not in the room, we risk losing control over the destiny of our communities. This expression of interest is not about committing to any specific development. It's just about making sure we are part of the conversation. It's getting us into the room where we can have debates. We need to. And that's if it gets beyond the theoretical, which it may well not. We're waiting for the government to make their announcements very shortly. It's about ensuring that if there are discussions about growth, infrastructure and investment in our area, Brentwood Borough is there to advocate for the needs of our residents. Without us, without...
I just want to raise a point of information if it's possible, Mr. Mayor.
We have very little time, but so...
Councillor Davis mentioned this being on the borders of our borough. West Horndon's in our borough, and it's not on the borders of our borough, it's in our borough, and the land around it is in our borough. And that's part of the point.
It goes beyond the boundaries of our borough, majority of it indeed. Without us at the table, decisions could be made without our input, leaving us with outcomes that fail to reflect the priorities of our community. I understand that this process may not lead to an outcome we would choose in an ideal world, but the reality is that it would always be better for us being in the room fighting for what is best deal for Brentwood. This is about leadership. It's about taking responsibility and making sure that whatever happens, we've done everything we can to protect and promote the interest of our residents. Some people may prefer to stand on the sidelines and protest. They may feel that shouting from outside is enough, but I've never believed in that approach.
Thank you. Sorry, the debate is concluded, so just go back to Councillor Aspinall to decide what to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's refreshing to see that the opposition are trying to oppose They're learning, pity they've not done it on their own back, but copied everything that Rochford have done. That's no surprise. Anyway, I have done nothing to be ashamed of, nothing that I would not do again, because in the best interest of our residents, we need to know what is being offered. There has been no decision taken. I would never take a decision on behalf of this borough that implicated our residents and had implications going forward on many areas without coming here first. Until a decision from this task force comes to us and says what they're talking about, we have nothing to tell the residents of West Horndon apart from the fact that there is a task force out there looking at their area for the future. But that's scaremongering if you haven't got any details to tell them. Figures, numbers, roads, implications, additional school places, additional doctor surgeries, additional railway facilities. None of that is available until someone tells us that. And then we come back here, we evaluate that, and as recommendation 2 says, if it doesn't affect our figures, it's down the road. We don't want to know. We run the risk then of someone else putting in, who already a developer interested in the land that's currently in West Horndon, currently in the next LDP that's going forward. That's the risk that we take, Mr. Mayor. But it's item 2, recommendation 2, and I stand by it. There is nothing to be gained by coming out now, apart from your literature that will go out on how you saved West Horndon. I can see it now. There is nothing to tell. And if Sheila and Fiona want me to do this, I will accompany them to West Horndon Parish Council. Okay, not a problem. I will do that.
Thank you. Now we can go to the vote.
Request a recorded vote, please. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Do we have 5 people? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So, we will now vote on the recommendations on page 127 and 128 of the agenda. Recommendation 1, that the Council notes the joint expression of interest which was submitted as part of the New Towns Task Force call for evidence. Recommendation 2, that the Council confirms the position expressed in the joint submission to the New Towns Task Force, that is on the condition if a new town is taken forward, it must contribute towards local housing need targets as set out in the MPPF.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Will members please state for, against or abstain when I call your name? Councillor LaPlane.
For.
Councillor Nikki Cuthbert.
For.
Councillor Aspinall.
For.
Councillor Baldock.
Against.
Councillor Barber.
Against.
Councillor G. Barrett.
For.
Councillor Dr. Barrett.
For.
Councillor Chinnery. Councillor Martin Cuthbert.
For.
Councillor Davis.
For.
Councillor Fulcher. Councillor Gelderbloom. Councillor Gibson.
Against.
Councillor Gordon.
Against.
Councillor Gorton.
For.
Councillor Haigh. Councillor Hurst.
Against.
Councillor Gerard. Councillor Kendall.
For.
Councillor Lewis.
For.
Councillor Marsh.
Against.
Councillor Mayo.
For.
Councillor McShane.
Against.
Councillor Murphy. Councillor Minot. Councillor Parker.
Against.
Councillor Patel.
Against.
Councillor Poppy. Councillor Pound. Councillor Rigby?
For.
Councillor Russell?
Against.
Councillor Sankey? Councillor Sangha?
Against.
Councillor Worsford?
For.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's 18 for, 16 against, so the motion is carried.
Thank you. We're now on to item 14, which is just for note, so I conclude that as noted. And item 15, the debate was concluded in the earlier on debate, so I now close the meeting.